What's up, everyone? It's Brap. It's Friday. No Crossfire today, so I'm very, very disappointed. There's no Crossfire. So wanted to do a quick Brap rant. So hold on a sec here. I'm getting feedback for some reason. Oh, here we go. Got rid of the feedback problem. Sorry about that. I was getting some feedback here about my headset, but yeah, it's Friday. No Crossfire. No Crossfire. Sadly enough, no Crossfire, and so wanted to do a quick Brap rant. Why not? It's Friday. I'm used to podcasting on Fridays, every night at 7 p.m. We're going to have Game Logic joining us here shortly. Big shout out to everyone in the live chat. Thank you so much for joining us. Perhaps saving the Friday podcast night. Thanks, man. Thank you, Truce here. I appreciate that. Do me a favor, everyone. Please retweet the link. Actually, let me do you all solid and drop the link in the live chat here so that you guys can share it on your favorite social media platform. So let me do that right now. There is the link in the live chat. So but let me do something here real quick. Let me do this. Let me officially kick off BRAP properly. All right, everyone. Had to officially kick off the show with the BRAP intro. And look, going to rant about a lot of stuff tonight. Stuff that I've been seeing in the conversation as relates to gaming, gaming media having a big problem. Which, look, I have never. Mooch and I have gone back for years about media bias, things like that, and I never thought there was this. How do you say? I never thought there was a conspiracy by the media to bring about the downfall of Xbox. I never thought that, but they are some interesting things that I'm noticing, trends, if you will, that I'm noticing from the gaming media space, and things that look, gaming media certainly changed from when I was younger and we had magazines. So things are definitely changed. So we're going to discuss that and Xbox influencers misleading fans. And HBO Max. I've seen a lot of conversation around HBO Max being somehow being kind of a using people using HBO Max as a way to predict the future of GamePass, which I think is kind of silly. But look, I want to introduce our new panel member. If you were live with us this past Wednesday, we formally introduced this gentleman, Game Logic, as an official panel member of BRAP. Game Logic, happy Friday to you, sir. How are you doing today, man?
Thanks, man. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you perfect.
Great. Yeah, it's a Friday afternoon after COVID or in COVID, I guess I should still technically say. So I'm just gonna be over here sipping some. Is this, is this today? I think this is Belgian oak and cherry ale. I think it is.
I mean, why not, right? I thought you were going to sip on some. What is it? Poppy Pilar? What I forget what it's called.
Yeah, Papa's Polar rum. Yeah, I didn't go that route this time. I needed to get rid of uh, Belgian ale before it aged out. So we'll
Gotcha.
go
No,
ahead
I
and
hear
wrap
you,
this up
man.
tonight.
Yeah, I may be having to step away for a few seconds to re up my beverage of choice, which is hazy IPA. So I may say, Logic, please grab that reins of the podcast. I'll be back in like 5 seconds. Uh, Believe it or not, most people probably aren't shocked by this, but Brap does have a refrigerator in his gaming room where I keep my cold beverages. So,
Most excellent.
oh, I mean, kind of have to. I think I don't know, that, in my opinion. So, um, but yeah, so we got a lot to talk uh, about today, Game Logic, and I love these rants because it's kind of a more of a commentary, if you will, where I feel like Brass more of just talking about some of the latest news, but some interesting takes out there, some interesting takes as it relates to HBO Max Well, what's interesting is so one of the things I'm seeing, Game Logic, and we talked about this in the BRAP DM. There's a thing that I've labeled that maybe I didn't label it, but one of the things that I'm seeing is that people just only read headlines, and there's a lot of people who read the HBO Max thing, didn't really understand the why behind it, why this was happening. You know, big merger acquisition between Warner Brothers and Discovery, and this is kind of a I don't I mean, this is I don't think this isn't, I think, anything unique per se from what I've seen with other M&As, where it's kind of like, okay, we're gonna hit the reset button, and we're gonna combine these two things together because it just doesn't make sense to have them, separate. Like, we're gonna reduce redundancies. Like, I've seen that in other M&As. um but one of the things that I've seen too, Logic, is that people were kind of like foreshadowing the future of Game Pass, or saying things like, oh, well, this just shows you that subscription models don't work. And I'm like, well, no, it doesn't. It doesn't do any of that, especially in this case, which what's happening with HBO Max is a result of an M&A. So, what are your thoughts on that, sir?
Yeah, no, totally agree. I mean, so what Brap's referring to is, obviously this week there was quarterly earnings calls, right, across a large part of the landscape. So a lot of the big tech companies went last week. And now we're seeing a lot of the entertainment companies go this week. As part of that announcement, Warner Brothers Discovery Plus, right, the new mega entertainment corporation, let slip, right, a lot of what their new plans are. Now, a lot of those new plans are nothing new. They were things that we were told. In fact, they were given as specific strategic justifications for and rationale when the inquiries were being held about whether or not this merger was going to be approved. So it was no. There was no surprise. It's been telegraphed for a very long time that HBO Max and Discovery Plus were going to collapse and become one service. So there was a lot of discussion out in the sphere this week as if that was something new. And then there's been a lot of triaging.
And I'm sorry, real quick,
Yeah,
by
go
the way,
ahead.
HBO Max is not going anywhere. Like, it's summer 2023, I believe, is when it's going to be, whatever this service is. It's going to replace not just HBO Max but Discovery Plus. Like, it's going to be a new service. I believe the programming on HBO Max has also been labeled as more male centric, and Discovery Plus being more female centric too. I saw that discussed. But I'm sorry. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, no, yep, and so yeah, there's been a lot of different ways that the company has characterized like its approach to programming, and obviously central to that discussion is what they're going to do about the DC properties, which have been in a high state of flux and churn, and a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of the table has been reset multiple times on what to do with the DCEU. And so there was just a lot of clamor this week out on Twitter and other spaces, as if this was all new news, as if like the barn was burning, etc. And I'm like, no. Lots of these things have been discussed for a very long time. This is no surprise. We knew. I mean, as you mentioned, right, when an M&A happens, one of the key things that happens is you get rid of redundancies because there's no point. I mean, there's no point in keeping two accounts payable departments, right? So,
Yeah,
you know,
Game Logic. I almost feel like that's like the first thing that happens, eliminating redundancies. I mean, I've been part of three M&As. I've been on the good side of it and the bad side, but that's kind of like my experience is that's kind of the first thing that happens. We're reducing redundancies. Your favorite manager who you work for may be gone, because there's someone else, right? So go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, 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 spot on. So it's to me, a lot of what's gone on this week hasn't been that surprising. That's the first thing off the tip. But then, as you mentioned, right, then the other thing is, it seems like we do this like every couple of weeks, like every 2 weeks when there's a negative story about a streaming service, right? Out come the, oh my god, what's going to happen to Game Pass? See, I told you. And so one of the things that I wrote this week was, um, and this isn't a perspective you have to agree with. It's just one for you to entertain and consider. In my mind, again, being in an industry where I deal with providing software as a service versus providing software on prem versus providing software as an enterprise license, right, that you can get to use forever. and dealing with things like differences in IT service delivery models, and delivery of software engineering as a service, and the difference between delivering a COTS product versus an engineered solution, et cetera. These are various business models that I have some familiarity in working with. And so one of the things is this whole topic of like what a Game Pass is and what Netflix is, and the whole emergence of the streaming kind of market or submarket is. In many cases, they are different things, and they are engineered differently, and they occupy a different place in the business model, and they drive different cost factors, right?
Hmm.
And so one of the things I mentioned this week is, number one, like streaming
Yeah.
is a technology,
Yep.
right? Streaming is not how I bill you. Streaming is not how I sell the thing to you. It's a technology, right? And then subscription is a consumption model, right? That is more about kind of how I bill you, right? Um, and then service is a business model, right, or delivery mechanism, right? It's the matter of I don't sell you a thing wholesale, right, as a big monolithic clump of stuff, right?
Hmm.
But you pay me periodically
Hmm.
to continuously deliver something, and you do that over a certain amount of time, and that drives things in a business model like a break even point, like when you do hosted services or software as a service, there is a calculation point that you make per customer that says, hey, at this, my strategic objective needs to be to retain a customer for X number of months, right, or X years. And at that point, they've hit the break even point by which I would have sold them a license of software, or its equivalent, right, for an equivalent lump sum. So if you think about something like Microsoft Office, right, that used to sell for, let's just pick a round number, 350 bucks, right? If I'm going to onboard somebody into Office 365, I need to keep them around long enough for them to pay me that $300 to $350, right? For me to have made an effective sale,
And by
right?
the way, when you
Yeah, go
say
ahead.
pay me, you're not saying, because some people may take that as that the employee is physically paying you. They're not. What you're saying is that whatever it is their job they're doing, um, whatever that output of whatever it is they're doing, which generates some kind of revenue, whatever the case is equal to that amount, right?
Yeah,
How's that?
I'm talking about the company from an accounting sheet perspective, right?
Okay.
So if
Yeah.
in my earnings column, right, I would normally put down like one dash mark, right, for a
Yeah.
$350 sale, right? In terms of continuing operating revenue, what I need to do over time is I need to retain a customer for the equivalent length of time, right, to equate to that
Okay.
$300 or $350,
Yeah.
right?
Okay. Yeah.
So all these things are different, right, in the streaming model. The other thing that I pointed out that we seem to like skip over is we constantly do this comparison of, well, Game Pass is the Netflix of games, and I'm like, um, Game Pass is not a streaming service, right? So right from jump, that comparison falls flat, right? It's a service model, right, and it's a subscription model, but it is not a streaming service, and so right there, it shouldn't really take a lot of arguing, right, to kind of start to convince a person that the comparisons are not equal, that we're not comparing apples to apples here. And so, when you talk, so the key faults this week were just kind of one, glomming onto HBO Max and what's happening with HBO Max as if it is. Um, as if this has been a thing that's been in run for 5 years and now all of a sudden it's collapsing, right? It's not. It's a complete restructuring, right, based on the completion of a very large M&A, and then to take that, right, as a burning bush example to say this is what's going to happen to Game Pass, which again is an entirely different service than HBO Max and Discovery Plus. And again, it's not to try to create an argument that your perspective, right, shouldn't be that Game Pass is going to fail or that you can't have your opinion about Game Pass. Nobody's saying that. You can think of Game Pass however you want to think of Game Pass. But when somebody tries to build a case and suggest that the logic is that these things are comparable, then I think it's kind of incumbent upon um, people who are are more responsible maybe in terms of news reporting and assessment to point out the faults and errors in that comparison.
Yeah, and I would even say that with because I see a lot of people comparing Game Pass to Netflix, that even the way those things are consumed are different, right? Where you have interactive entertainment, which is consumed differently than watching television or movies. And I think that's something that Charles Zelnick, who is I think he's the CEO of Take Two's, talked about, where he's saying, hey, look, it's Netflix, maybe comparing it to like a Netflix isn't maybe accurate, because gamers may buy 3 to 4 or 5. I think he said and I don't know where he's pulling this data, but he's saying an average 3 to 4 games a year, and they're probably spending about 35, 40 hours plus in those games. So you probably really can't compare how people consume gaming versus television and movies, and kind of compare those two services on equal footing, because they're different, and even how they consume, how people consume those things. So, but I think the natural, I guess, comparison is because there's nothing else like Game Pass, I guess. Well, there is. I mean, there's Sony's got its subscription service, but it doesn't have day and date. But they're still, and EA has its subscription service. Ubisoft has it on PC. Um, the biggest differentiator with the Xbox is that it has its games day and date. But still, I mean, Ubisoft has a version or of a subscription service. But it's interesting. You never hear people compare Ubisoft or what EA is doing, or even like what PlayStation is doing, to Netflix. I haven't seen that, at least. I haven't seen people say the new PlayStation Plus is like Netflix. I haven't
Well,
seen
right, because yeah. I mean, yeah, and I won't say that much for PlayStation Plus, but right with regards to the third party publishers, and that's because those third party publishers aren't specifically like aligned with a plastic box, right? That is of a certain color or the other. Um, so it doesn't encourage that much fanboyism kind of around it.
Yeah, that's true. That it and if EA had their own plastic box, it probably would. But even then, and I could be wrong. I don't see people comparing like PlayStation Plus and Netflix. I just don't see that. The comparison I see is PlayStation Plus versus Game Pass. So
Right, right.
and vice versa too. I mean, I do see people compare Game Pass to PlayStation. It's interesting. The conversation around subscription service is always fascinating to me, because one, I've been gaming for a long time. And this is, I've seen every iteration, business model, and, over the last, 40 years that I've been gaming, 40 years that I've been gaming. And, you know, I, and I know we talked about this before, Game Logic, but it's almost like, when this conversation happens, it's almost like you have two camps. You have one camp that wants to prove to you why Game Pass is terrible for the industry, and then you have the other camp that wants to tell you why it's the future and the best thing for the industry. I think, like, in my opinion, I think that Game Pass or subscription models are probably going to be just another addition to another tool in the belt to the gaming industry, another way for companies to generate revenue, just like with microtransactions and um, you know downloadable content. I don't know. What do you think, man? Do you think?
Well, well, right, and I mean it's again it's why like some of the comparisons are I think bad and misaligned. You know, so when Amazon started Amazon Prime Video, they didn't stop selling movies,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? Now, one case that's interesting to look at is you look at Spotify. Spotify streams music. It does not sell movies, right? Which again kind of informs you that it's a different type of business model. And Netflix is the same way, right? And yes, I think they're 2 or 3 movies shipping,
Game
two
Logic.
or three movie. Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry to interrupt you, but you just brought something up that a lot of people forget about Game Pass. It sells games. Like, you buy games, you can buy the games that go into the platform at a discounted price. People
Right.
always forget that. You can't do that with Netflix, like you said. You can't do that with Spotify. So I was go ahead, man.
Yeah. No. Right. I mean, so they're different models, and again, it's not to try and convince people that that the model's correct and that they're wrong and like evaluating that it's a bad model. I don't really care if you think it's a bad model or not. That's your own opinion. Again, this is about like what facts you're basing the opinion on. And people could choose to base their opinions on incorrect facts. That's a fine way to be. But you're just going to get pointed out that you're basing it on incorrect conjecture. And so like you mentioned, right? As far as we can tell, as far as we know, there's no. I have never seen anything right from Microsoft that says the intention is to convert all of our business model, our gaming business model, over to service delivery, over to subscriptions. Um, and this is a kind of interesting thing with Microsoft, and I talked earlier this week about how it's really good if you can do research and kind of pay attention to the tech industry at large, and Microsoft at large, and not just the gaming division, because it gives you additional insights. Right. One of the things that's super interesting about Microsoft, and I think we mentioned this last year, Windows 11, right? Uh, and a lot of people were surprised about Windows 11, and as is often the case, as we're talking about tonight on Twitter, there was lots of clowning commentary running around saying, "Oh my God, I thought Microsoft said that Windows 10 was the last version ever." And then if you go back through all the journalistic archives, you will find that Microsoft never said that. That was a comment in a line made in an article that tons of people picked up and ran with, but no official Microsoft executive, right, was quoted in any type of press release as saying this is the last version of Windows ever. So, right, this is just kind of an example of kind of how we get a little bit of Mandela syndrome, right, kind of going around in the news cycle. And so, like you said, like I don't know of any reason. I haven't seen any indication that the intent is to convert everything over to subscription service, as far as I understand.
And
Um,
I don't think Phil's kind of said as much too, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's kind of said like, "Hey, we don't plan on not selling games."
right, right. It's good. There are going to be two models that coexist, that, as you mentioned, benefit and feed off of each other. Right? Is that essentially,
Well,
by inviting you to come into the store and come into the library and check out a book, right, or however you want to think about it, right, rent to own, whatever, right. I know when I was subscribed to Game Pass, one of the big considerations that I had was, I've had a couple negative. Um, Nate, what I want to say, Nate, I'm drinking this Cherry Oak Belgian Ale too much. A couple of negative experiences. Um, I've had a few negative experiences, right? I probably had at least one negative
yeah,
experience with every digital storefront, right? In
yeah.
trying to return a piece of software.
Mhm.
And so I, at a certain point, kind of got tired of it, but not tired enough that I wanted to go physical. It's another argument that people like to have on the Twitterverse that I'm not interested in. I don't want to go back to physical. I'm digital, for the most part, except on the Nintendo Switch for reasons. But one of the things that I looked at the services providing me an advantage in was that it allowed me to further vet software, right, without having a concern of if I played it for more than 2 hours, or in some cases at all, right, with some digital storefronts, that I then owed payment for the entirety of that software. And so it gave me an opportunity to utilize software to meet my level of assurance that it didn't have some game stopping bug or some critical bug that deprived me of the consumer satisfaction of that product. And then if I wanted to buy it right at some point later than like the 2 hour game time that Steam gives me, then I could do that. And so in the same thing, I've said the same thing about the PlayStation Plus demos. There was a lot of negative commentary about that, but again, in a world where some of the refund policies for some of these digital storefronts are pretty draconian, I think if it if it provides you additional consumer value, I don't think that's the only reason you should subscribe to the service. But if that is an adjunct value that it provides you, then I think that's a positive.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And it's again, I think because again, this conversation always comes up with Game Pass. I really do think that it's probably going to be in addition to what we have. And you mentioned, you know, uh, we talked about Game Pass still selling games, and I think in part because you really do have different consumers, and this is the same with any other consumer product. And I know we've talked a lot about this with $70 games, and people, shaking their fists and gathering the pitchforks about $70 games. But consumers consume things differently, and there are going to be consumers that are going to say, hey, you know what, I love what a subscription model has to offer for me. One of the things that one of the arguments I always see is like, oh my God, there's all this built-in value. I think an Xbox influencer said that, oh, there's like a couple $1,000s worth of value in Game Pass. It's great. I'm like, okay, so but what does that mean to a consumer? They're like that. Not every consumer is going to see that $6,000 value or calculate that, right? The way that he did. And people are going to buy or play games differently. They're going to either play Fortnite, or they're going to maybe pick up those 3 to 4 games that I can't forget. Now I forget his name. Strauss Zelnick mentioned. Or there's going to be people like, hey, you know what? I want everything. I want that buffet of games. I want it all. Give it to me. Big shout out to OBM as in the live chat. One Bad Mother, who I've known for geez, I feel like the last 20 years, but he's one of those individuals. He wants a opportunity to play a variety of different games, and that service makes sense for him. He's a connoisseur in that regard of those indie titles that he gets exposure to in Game Pass. So, I think people forget that we not all like what you want and how you buy isn't what everyone else wants or how everyone else buys. And again, for whatever reason, in gaming, we forget about that for some reason. I don't understand why we do, but we do. So now again, I'm not against having a conversation about the viability of Game Pass. I think it's a fair conversation to have. But I think where I kind of cringe a little bit is when people start taking these examples like HBO Max and saying, "Oh, this is the future of Game Pass." It's like, no, not really.
Right. Yeah. It's a little hyperbolic.
Well, yeah. So, Game Logic, any other thoughts on that particular topic with HBO Max and people comparing it to Game Pass?
No, man. I mean, it's a completely separate topic about the Warner Bros. Properties and all the superhero stuff. Eric Jackson and others were in the BRAP chat channel talking that up. So
I wonder what's going to happen with the DC properties. I feel like DC. I mean, outside of Batman, DC just really hasn't. And I've liked some of the other stuff, the DC movies. Suicide Squad. I've enjoyed those movies. Even the Green Lantern with Ryan. What's his face? I can't remember his name.
Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool.
I didn't mind him in Green Lantern. I think it was. I enjoyed it, but I feel like the DCU just hasn't had that oomph like the Marvel universe has in terms of movies and television. Outside of Batman, of course.
Yeah, well, and the Arrowverse, which I think has been, I would call that pretty successful over the last.
Yeah, I would say the Arrowverse too. Yeah, which actually my wife, believe it or not, is actually a big fan of too. So, and she's not really into comics per se, but loves it. But well, I shouldn't say that. She actually enjoyed Daredevil on Netflix when that was out on Netflix. But I hope The Rock could save the DCU.
Yeah.
I have high hopes for Black Adam. But go ahead, man.
I don't know. I'm not. I haven't bought into the concept of a Black Adam as as its own kind of vehicle. But again, I'm the type of person who doesn't really buy into like why Venom should be its own like cinematic vehicle either. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it turns out.
Yeah, I get it. Like I get that like the sentiment with Black Adam and Venom, but but Tom Hardy I think just pulls that off. He just
Yeah, and I mean, I know we like to have high confidence in Dwayne Johnson, but I mean, the Rock was in the Doom movie also. That didn't.
Oh, don't bring up the Doom movie, man. He's also in Scorpion King, by the way.
He was.
But the Doom movie wasn't that good. it just didn't scream Doom to me, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
yeah.
It was a thing.
It was. It definitely was a thing. I hope that something good happens with the DCU. We'll see what happens. I mean, and I hope that the one thing that I enjoyed about HBO Max and HBO in particular is the original content that HBO would put out, and hopefully that still is the case. I think someone in the live chat earlier said I don't want to see like Housewives or something with I forget some HBO show. I'm like, uh, next to it. I'm like, yeah, you might see it next to it, but
Might get the
that's not.
DCEU and the Discovery Plus crossovers. It might be
Oh my
90
god,
Day Fiance with Blue
90 Day
Beetle.
Fiance. Yeah, right. We see The Rock as Black Adam in 90 Day Fiance. So I don't know. Yeah, it's going to be interesting how this. But from what I've read though, my understanding is that the infrastructure for HBO actually wasn't that good as Discoveries, but the programming for HBO is better than Discoveries, I think, or something like that. I've read. I'm paraphrasing here. I think I read that in Variety. So there was some kind of conversation about the technology or something like that. That Discovery could, provide better technology in terms of the streaming capabilities of.
Yeah, well, I mean, lots of those streaming companies have built out their technologies differently. You look at like what's on Discovery Plus, and you look at like the Nat Geo stuff and the stuff that's in like incredibly high resolution, and really feeds the fan base who's into stuff like that. Like they don't want to be looking at
That's not Planet Earth, is it? That's BBC, right? Planet Earth.
I think so. Yeah.
Oh my god! Let
So
me tell you something. Planet Earth for me for many years was like if I got a TV, like never forget when I got a 1080p TV, Planet Earth, 4K TV, Planet Earth. But go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
yeah, no. I mean, so I mean, the consumers of that type of content don't want to be looking at something that looks like Wild Kingdom from the late 1970s. So, um, you know,
Oh my
so,
god! Oh, Logic, seriously, dude. Like I feel old now. I bet
Mutual,
you a lot of what's it? Mutual Omaha's Wild
Mutual of
Kingdom.
Omaha. Yeah.
What's a Mutual Omaha was? If they're still around, they were like a life insurance company or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. I believe they are still around. Yeah.
Oh my god, I remember that. Was that like the music? I don't know,
Yeah,
man. Oh
I
my,
can't even remember.
I feel old and I read like a giant. Oh my god, it's funny, man. Like I was watching um when I got my OLED, I got the um Planet Earth, BBC's Planet Earth in 4K, and they actually did a biome like kind of Planet Earth type thing for Star Wars. Have you seen? I don't know if you've seen that, which is actually really cool. I think it's on Disney Plus. Um, but like I would crank the settings to vivid to get that Spanish soap opera effect on my TV and just put Planet Earth and just be like wowed, looking at like the jungle and the different looking at like the North Pole. But anyhow, I'm rambling. But go ahead, Logic.
No, that was all I was going to mention. I mean, so yeah, I mean, I would have high hopes at the possibilities for merging that technology, moving it over. I think. I think the key thing was, there were a lot of reports of this. Now, this is more specifically talking about the HBO Max thing, not necessarily HBO Max interpolation to the gaming industry, but stories ran rampant about what was going on with HBO Max, regardless of the comparison to Game Pass. Just in terms of how a lot of the things were being reported, how a lot of leaks were happening at the same time, right before they did their earnings call, and then what they presented in the earnings call weren't the same things as a lot of the rumors that came out, and then different news stories ran around at different times, and it didn't all get syncopated and corrected. I think Tom's Hardware put out the best article that I read about that earnings call and the things that were announced there. And one thing that was key, I tweeted about this earlier today. I can't even remember the guy's name because I'm not an entertainment industry expert. But one of the key things was the chief creative officer of HBO and HBO Max. I think it was Colin Bloys, I think is his name. Was retained, right? So as this merger, got completed, and in the walk up to this earnings call, right in the month of July, it was reported that that guy had been contract had been re-upped and for a 5-year stint. So it's highly doubtful to me that there's some intention to just radically swerve in an entirely different direction from what HBO Max has now, and that they won't be filling those coffers with DCEU oriented content,
Mm-hmm.
or else, why would you retain the guy who was putting all of that together? So DCEU has. I mean, everybody's gonna have different opinions based on tastes. So I'm definitely not saying this as like an authoritative source. So I just mean me personally. I like what they were doing with Titans. They have good properties in Doom Patrol. There have been other properties that have come through there that people have been up on. for in terms of DC content. There's I think I can't remember exactly, but I know Berlanti's worked on some of it. So the unfortunate thing that I saw was that now this was rumored, hasn't been corroborated yet, but the Green Lantern project, which
Yeah.
Berlanti was working on,
Yeah.
the rumor is that is also getting nixed, just because from a cost saving perspective, it just hadn't completely gelled past whatever threshold at which you would maybe not exit. It had sort of maybe a bit of a convoluted storyline in terms of they had cast Alan Scott, which was the old JSA version of the Green Lantern, whose ring was mystical, not actually based on the rings of Oa. But then they had also cast Guy Gardner, indicating that and they had said that they were going to build it around the Green Lantern Corps. It was also going to be, because it was built around the Green Lantern Corps, it was also going to be a very large production. And was obviously going to be, I mean, and I think this is the thing that to me, I apologize for the segue. We're going off a little bit on the entertainment tangent here. The thing that has always presented a challenge to me, it just seems like DC has always been a slightly more challenging show to put together, just based on kind of its properties and the characters. Batman always works well because it's kind of easy to do a secret agent that uses gadgets, right?
Yeah, and
but like, yeah, how do you? I mean, Superman's always been problematic because how do you create a challenge that's like sufficiently interesting to keep people except for other Supermen, right? And you can't have but so many of those running around the planet, right, at any one time.
You can only go back to General Zod so many times.
Right, exactly. So, and then you look at the Green Lantern, right? What was the thing I put in chat? That the Green Lantern Corps is like 7,000 people, right, right across all sectors of the universe, and then they're all using weird superpowers where, when something's projected by the ring, it's based solely on the imagination of the person constructing it. So, like, how do you possibly do enough CGI effects with enough constructs, right, for, I don't know how many episodes in a season you want to do, right, to keep people interested. Then you compound the fact that there's like, what is it, like, I'm sure somebody in the chat knows, there's like 5 different ring colors, right? So you got the Green Lantern Corps, the Yellow Lantern Corps,
the yellow, the
Star Sapphires, the Indigo Lanterns, like, great Scott, man, like, so...
It's like Jedi lightsabers.
Right. So, good on them for pulling the Flash off, because the same thing, right? You got like 99 different speed-based characters, right, in the Flash property. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. Hope they figure it out.
No, I do too. As a comic book fan, I hope they do figure it out. Although I've always leaned more Marvel than DC, I do hope they work it out. There is a as we know. What's his face? God, why am I forgetting his name? I'm having a complete brain fart, by the way. This is what happens when I have a busy week at work during the. God, what's his name? The guy that played the Joker.
Jared Leto. Yeah.
No, not Jared Leto. The other guy. It's like the.
Wait.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Was Joaquin Phoenix the other one?
Yeah,
okay.
There's Joker 2 that he's starring in. It's coming out. So.
Yeah, with Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga, yes, yeah.
Which I just, I like her as an actress, but like I just don't.
I thought she was really good in that movie with Bradley Cooper. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, if you would have asked me a couple of years ago, I could have maybe seen her pulling off like a Harley Quinn. But
me too. Yeah.
Now I just don't see her going to that full extent of the range. And it's also, I think it's a little weird too, now that she again, this is again a problem that the DCEU has had, right? Is you already have an actress, right, kind of established in that role, right? Why the constant recasting, recasting?
Yeah, that's true, man. That's a great point. Yeah. It's interesting. And I know we'll get to another topic, chat, by the way. It's interesting. I was watching when I watched the Batman movie with Robert Pattinson, like, I enjoyed it, but I felt like, what, I've seen this so many times now. It's just not as interesting for me to watch anymore. These, and not that the Batman was a bad movie, but it's just, I don't know, man. I've seen it so many times now. It was good, but I don't know. I just felt like, okay, I've seen this so many times. I'm kind of over this now. I think it's kind of how I was feeling, I guess. I don't know, man.
Yeah. I'm the same way about Spider-Man. It's like I want a live action Miles Morales personally.
Yeah, I would rather see a Miles Morales than a Peter Parker. Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. I mean, And
Hey,
not
what
that the Robert Patterson adaptation of not Spider-Man, but of Batman was bad. But I mean, like, how many times have I seen I mean, for me, I mean, Batman with um, with Michael Keaton. I mean, that was like, whoa, when that first came out, right?
yeah,
And then
I mean, you and I have talked about. I mean, we were comic book starved at that point too.
yeah, and then the series kind of then it went to the Batman with the nipple suit and George Clooney. Um, and then Nolan came back and reinvigorated that movie with so yeah, I don't know, man. I just feel like they've leaned so hard on Batman. Like, how many other iterations of Batman can I see?
Right, right. Hey, and I apologize. Somebody's yelling at me in chat, which is fine. I think it's a justifiable yell. If I can stink and find it again. So Alfonso was asking, why won't this dude answer the question about the comment he made about Mandela? What was the question? And I apologize, guys. First of all, those of you guys who welcomed me to the show Wednesday night, I was surprised that some of you welcomed me to the show, so I do very much appreciate it. I have, though I get distracted by chat and sometimes get off my center, so I don't watch it religiously anymore. So I do apologize. I guess I will keep it open this time to see you for questions
Hey,
since there's only
you don't
two of
have
us
to
here.
apologize. You know what, live chat? You don't need to relax. Seriously, leave this man alone.
No, but if I used a term that somebody didn't understand, it's at the risk of me getting the question wrong. The Mandela effect is I said Mandela syndrome. I should have said Mandela effect. The Mandela effect is that effect that you have where in social circles where, and I'm surprised somebody else didn't jump in and answer this. I thought, but it's that thing where there's like a commonly accepted belief that it's kind of like a Schrodinger's box kind of thing, right? A bunch of
You might
people.
need to explain the Schindler's box, by the way.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Well,
mean,
let me just stick with the Mandela effect. Right. It's it's when there's it's when there's a belief that rises into popularity so much that it becomes truth, even though it's false. Right. And
and
so.
like in some circles, this might apply to vaccines. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. This is. Let me see. I know there's some popular examples, and I'm brain dumping them.
No. Oh, you mean like the election being stolen? I'm sorry.
What's that?
The election being stolen?
No, like a lot of it is around like urban myths, right? That people, it's kind of
Oh yeah.
Snopes kind of stuff. Why in the world am I not finding like?
Yeah, as being Latino, I know all about urban myths, so I get it.
Right.
Yeah, no, yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Okay, so like here's one. So the painting of Henry VIII eating a turkey leg, right? We all think and swear that we've seen that painting. There is no such painting in existence of Henry VIII eating a turkey leg. Luke, I am your father, right? It's the line that we all believe, right? That Darth Vader said. That's not the line. The line is actually, no, I am your father.
he says, "I am your father."
Yeah. So yeah. So it's so
we,
you know.
we all say, "Luke, I am your father."
Right.
No, and actually that's true because a lot of people quote that line exactly like that. That's actually not the line.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just things like that. It's false memories. It's things that become endemic in society, and we come to believe that they're true. It springs from the notion that there are a lot of people running around who thought for a certain period of time that Mandela had died in prison. Some people still think that, right? The guy didn't die in prison, right? It's just kind of a thing that came into being in societal circles, and that's what we think. It's not quite the same thing as conspiracy theories, which are malicious, right? These are just kind of general postulations that we all just kind of wind up leaning on.
Oh, you mean like Xbox has good games? I'm sorry, I'm joking. Low hanging fruit. I'm sorry, it's a joke.
But a lot of these things too are, again, I can't find some great examples. A lot of these things are too like brand names. Like a lot of times we swear that I forget the one that I like the peanut that is like the Planters peanut. And the Monopoly guy, like I think one of them has a monocle, but the other one doesn't. But in kind of societal memory, if you ask people if those characters have monocles, they'll typically say both have monocles, right?
No, they don't. The Monopoly guy does not. The well, Planner's guy does.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Right. Right. Yeah.
yeah, and that's like, and that's the same as people saying that that the Xbox Family Game Pass is going to be an extra $10.
That's really good. Alfonso's yelling at me again. Okay, thanks for clearing that up for me. So I guess he's satisfied that we've covered it. Roger that. So yeah, we don't know that Xbox Game Pass Family
Well,
Game Pass is
well,
going to be $25.
well, according to Xbox, according to maybe, all right, I'm going to be polite about this. But according to some Xbox influencers, and I've seen this before at with just not just the Xbox. I mean, I've seen this with influencers in general, where they say things and the community just kind of runs with it without verifying whether or not this is true, only because it suits a narrative. Um, I remember early in the console generation, the Xbox Series X is going to destroy the PlayStation 5 in terms of performance because of the 12 teraflops and people not understanding what 12 teraflops means. And that even when developers came out, a big shout out to Optimus Code, we miss you. But Code, who developed video games, came out and said, hey guys, pump the brakes. No one listened to somebody who actually made video games, who understood the technology. Imagine that though, right? Just like last year, people didn't trust scientists. But it's interesting because um, so Game Pass is doing this kind of trial of sorts with in Ireland, and I forget where else. It's the in my dad's my father's home country of Colombia in South America. Um, they are doing this. There's an Xbox Insiders program in Colombia and Ireland where um, people can preview this Game Pass family thing, and um, somehow people have arrived, and I'm seeing some some Xbox YouTube influencers saying that, hey, um, only $10 more is great. That hasn't been confirmed. That like I this is and I kind of have a pet peeve with misinformation in general, or and disinformation, like especially after COVID. um, but it's like no, like this hasn't been confirmed yet. And we talked about this in the BRAP DM game logic, which I think you said, hey, people did some kind of backwards math. It's a it's good on their part, but it's still a guess more or less. But it's unfortunate that you have influencers that are doing this because this is how things kind of like we just talked about the Mandela effect, right? Um, this is how things start kind of churning these myths, if you will, that haven't been validated. Oh, I'm sorry. Nine Life says Jez said it's going to be $25. Okay, but maybe $25, but that's still not official. And where's Jez Corden getting this number? Nine's Life, like, did he say that he was told by a source within Microsoft? I mean, go
Right.
ahead.
So just a foot stomp again, right? Microsoft has made no official announcement about how much the Xbox Family Game Pass is going to cost. The way that the $25 thing got out there is because Games Radar, maybe other ones as well, they took the discount price that you're getting, right? And so if you're moving people into Family Game Pass who are already subscribed or you're already subscribed, there is a conversion rate in which your current Game Pass subscriptions will be converted over, or which you will be basically prorated. People have taken the math and reversed engineered it back to a value of roughly $10, right, for a month subscription for somebody who's being moved in under the Game Pass umbrella of a family plan. They have extrapolated that and made a guess that that is the additional amount that Microsoft is going to charge you. So there is a made up number based on some back of the napkin math that believes that it's going to be $25. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Maybe they've made a great guess, but the point is that there are people who have followerships who are listened to as if they are authoritative sources, and they don't have the authoritative backing to make this claim. That's all we're saying. Just take it with a grain of salt. Don't be surprised. And if it comes out and it's a different number, the thing BRAP's getting at is the thing that just kind of bothers me sometimes is, then people will flip out and say, see, Microsoft lied to us. And so the problem with that is, again, this is how we get to things like no release date is ever announced for a game. There's a lot of conjecture that a game is supposed to come out at a certain time. And when the company says, finally gives a release date that is like out in 2023, people go, you lied to us, right? The game's been delayed, right? You should have told us earlier. And it's like, no, the game was never delayed because I never told you it was going to come out this fall, right? So again, you can choose to believe whatever you want, right? We're just letting you know that, right, that information's not official.
Yeah, and the reason why I bring it up, because it would be nice to have some like sensibility and some common sense, I guess, to this. Like, instead of YouTube influencers, Xbox influencers coming out and saying, "Oh my God, this thing's a big deal. It's only gonna be $10 more. This is amazing." It's like, no, like that's not even official.
So
And
this is why I don't pay attention. Nine Lives is saying Jez was the first one who said Microsoft was coming out with family. No, Nine Lives. Phil Spencer was the first one who alluded to the fact that Microsoft was going to do an Xbox Family Game Pass plan.
yeah, actually, that's actually true. Yeah, and a lot of people will quote Jess Corday because he does speak to people at Microsoft. But again, I mean, Jess Gordon's not an employee at Microsoft, and he doesn't get things right all the time. He's gotten some things right, and you take those things with a grain of salt. But I wouldn't speak in absolutes. Only Sith do that. Um, Star Wars reference, but yeah, I mean that's kind of my point. Like that, and outside of what Nine Lives is saying, I mean that's not i- the reality is that there's no confirmation. And that's like, but this is, again, this goes back to kind of what I saw at the start of this generation, where people were saying, hey, you know what, there are certain YouTube influencers out there who have never developed a video game in their life, have never who maybe have a high level understanding of how hardware works because they game on PCs, but have never actually made a game. And people were actually going to those individuals and like as if it was gospel, quoting them and believing them. And it's like,
Yeah, I mean this is
mind blowing to me. I just don't understand that. Like, and the problem is that it I think part of it, it's about, if I hear anything that can make my plastic box of choice look great, I'm going to just blindly um take that as gospel and just profess it to the rest of the world. And it just, that is just, I don't know. I don't get that.
right. And look, I mean, I don't want to knock all the dishes off the table. Nine Lives. Look, if you have 100% unquestioning blind faith in Jez, then please go ahead and trust in that number. It's not. I'm not trying to tell you to not believe Jez. What I'm conveying to people is the matter of point of information. That the $25 number that's running around rampantly has no official corroboration. Now, that's the
Yeah.
information, and then you
Yes.
can make whatever decision you want to make based on that information.
Yeah, exactly. And I would agree with you, Game Logic. I don't, and also I don't want people to think that I'm saying that you shouldn't believe that. What I'm saying is take it with a grain of salt. you know, and that's kind of it. Like, until we get a kind of an official announcement. My point is that there's influencers out there that are running around as if this has been announced, or that this is some kind of official announcement that in fact it's going to be $10 more. We don't know that. There's speculation based on what Game Logic just said, but we don't know. We don't know if it's going to be $10 or it could be $20 more for all we know. But it is. I will say this: like, it's cool that Microsoft is offering that option. I have a family here. We all have multiple Xboxes. Sometimes it's a little annoying where I might I can I could I would give access to my kids for on the other Xboxes to my account, and that's how we kind of share Game Pass. But if I want to play and they want to play, it's like, God, I wish they had their own account.
Yeah, let me go ahead and address this in
Yeah.
the chat too, because
Yeah.
Maxi, multiple people have tweeted out their Xbox screen showing that it's €21.99. Again, great, good for them. I hope people understand this program and how it's running, how it's rolling out, and like what these things mean. So it's rolling out as part of the Insiders program, which means it's not being rolled out to everyone in general availability. It means that it is priced at a level for the purposes of the demonstration. Now, perhaps that pricing model will continue. Um, you know, foreign exchange rates fluctuate all the time too, so I don't know what equivalency you want to draw between the euro and the dollar right now versus what it might be in the future. So that's another point of possible delta. But the point is that I would also caution people to understand that things roll out in preview, and then they are sometimes priced differently when they officially roll out. Take in the case GeForce Now, right? Rolled out as no cost initially, and then rolled out at a very small cost thereafter, and then rolled out at a pretty significant price increase, right, when it was officially rolled out to the masses. So again, you can choose to believe whatever you want. If you want to choose to believe that people who are posting screenshots of their Xbox in other territories in Ireland, that it's €21.99, and run the foreign exchange rate and believe that that's what it's going to be priced in the U.S., then that's a great prediction for you to make. And then I hope that it remains true. That's for you to be satisfied or dissatisfied if that does not remain the case.
Yeah, that's a great point, man. Hold on a second.
Yeah, no, it's another great thing that Mr. Tennis is bringing up here, because I addressed this today too. Mr. Tennis says, so technically Microsoft is going to be getting even more money per family plan when you can just share your account with someone else. And so, just in terms of the program, in this case, they're not sharing the game, they're sharing access. And so they are entitling another individual to the same level of access that they have through GamePass, through the service delivery plane. Now, one of the things that I addressed today, which I think is another very careful thing that people should do their homework on and find out about. Game sharing is one thing on Xbox. Being a valid subscriber to a service is a different thing, right? And so, and then concurrency of use is a different thing. And so, one thing that I would want to make sure about is that people aren't making assumptions based on a lot of conflation, because those are all different entitlements, privileges, and permissions within the Xbox, the Xbox access. I guess I'll just call it schema, right? And so, just because you are on a Game Pass family plan does not necessarily mean that all four of you, right, 5 or 6 people, right, within a family plan are all going to be able to play Halo Infinite concurrently multiplayer online, right? That is a grotesque assumption to make. When Microsoft has detailed nothing so specific about the type of access that you will have. It could be that two people,
and that's the assumption that people are making, because they hear, okay, family plan, that means I have access to everything. I can watch stuff, and they're probably attributing this to Netflix, right? Where, Netflix, you can have multiple. I have this with my kids. There's 4 profiles or whatever the case is. We can all watch Netflix simultaneously, and I think there's obviously a limited number of devices that you can use in Netflix under one account, but I think that's probably what's driving this a little bit too, where people kind of are thinking, oh, this is going to be like Netflix and how you share there. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, and we just went through this a few months ago, right, with the network outage, right, where I talked about the differences between the network outage and checking in as a valid Xbox user, and then checking in as an Xbox user, as a valid Xbox user who has privileges and permissions to access Game Pass content, and then that being then again different about whether or not you can access a game, whether or not it exists in Game Pass, whether or not you've actually bought the game or not, and whether or not the game is downloaded on a console that's not your primary console, and yada yada, right? So there's 9 levels of hell, right, to this schema. They're all intertwined, and it's just very risky to set yourself up for wrong interpretations of the services, because they're all different. They're all different services, right? Being a Game Pass subscriber does not entitle you to all the permissions and privileges, right, that all of the other services do. And so it would be good to make sure that you understand how those things are entangled, and good to understand what you're entitled to, rather than make assumptions about it, and wind up, putting yourself in a place where you could be disappointed.
Moneybag in the live chat saying they said family plan access everything They said family plan access everything separately. You can have 5 people on Halo at the same time.
So Moneybag, who said that and where? Because that's not in any Microsoft
Yeah,
documentation
I'm
that I've
not.
seen.
Yeah, I'm not. In Moneybag, I'm looking as Logic is talking. I'm looking at all the articles right now, and actually Xbox's own official press release of this um, of this program in Ireland and Colombia, and I'm not seeing that. If you could link that, article where Microsoft says that, hey, you know what, you can have 5 people on Halo at the same time. I would greatly appreciate that. It would give me a little more insight into what the program is going to entail. So
Right.
because
Because
I'm not seeing. I'm doing a Google search right now, and I'm not seeing. And again, I mean, Moneybags could be right. I just based on my search, that's not coming up.
right, because this whole thing started because the official announcement was posted, and then right below that post, right, was a lot of people, right, starting to make the jump that that the thing was $10, and I was like, okay, I'm reading the official press release, and I don't see that number cited anywhere. And then right underneath that as well, people were saying, "Oh yeah, this will be a great way for me to let everybody on the family plan get on Halo Infinite." And I'm like, it does not say that anywhere. That's a game share entitlement, not necessarily a Game Pass family plan entitlement, right? And so those things would be different.
He's
Um,
saying okay, I'll look at because each account has its own name.
each account has its. So this is another thing, right? So each account has its own name, but you have to dig into how are account names associated underneath one basically master account name, right, as the parent account. So basically there's going to be one account that's the parent account. All these will be child level dependent accounts, right? And what you have to look at is what privileges and accesses does that entitle people to. And then it's going to be different based on whether or not you're on a primary console, right, or another console. So it's just a lot of stuff to pull apart, right? That is not as having just gone through this on the Nintendo Switch, right? Um,
Yeah.
it's definitely not the same. Now, again, I point that as an analog, right? I'm not saying I'm basing what I've just recently been saying on the Nintendo Switch. I've been basing what I've said based on a very deep study of Xbox and the fact that, and also working in the identity management field and data rights access field, that all these things are nested and intertwined, and they don't
Yeah.
necessarily. Sometimes they stack hierarchically, sometimes they don't. This is a great, and again, this goes back to the network outage, right? So there's an existing set of attributes that gate people's accesses, privileges, and permissions, right, for different types of content. Now you're creating another structure that was not in the original schema, right? So you've got to do one of two things. You have to overlay that, interweave it, you've got to integrate it somehow. Sometimes that's easy depending on how you set it up originally. Sometimes it's not, right? Look at the fact that, how many years it took for PlayStation players to be allowed to change their username, right? Because when that whole schema was originally engineered and the way those systems and subsystems were integrated, making changes like that would have created lots of problems from an account management perspective.
Yeah. And I'm actually I'm reading the Games Radar article where I think people kind of did the backwards math, but what they're saying is Game Pass Ultimate Games content. Or they're saying, okay, so the all right, so the Family Game Pass thing. Okay, any accounts added by the main user will have their own unique access. So their own unique access to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate Games. What does that mean, right? What is unique
And
access?
and the big thing that I was pulling out of that is,
Yeah.
and I saw where people were making the leap. Once again, differences in the grammatical structure of the sentences, right? 5 people on an Xbox Game Pass family plan will be able to access Halo Infinite. That is true. All 5 people will be able to access Halo Infinite, will be able to access any given title that exists in Game Pass. That is a different sentence than all 5 people on an Xbox Game Pass family plan will be able to access Halo Infinite concurrently and be able to play multiplayer online, right, in the same party.
Game Logic. I fear for humanity. I really do. Um. Yeah, because it doesn't really get into specifics. Um.
because
It's just saying you
I'm
need
sure they don't know because I
yeah,
guarantee even as much as Xbox thinks they know how it works right now, I guarantee you it will not work as they think it works the first time that this is rolled out, and they're going to have to go in and make fixes because there are probably bugs out in production that will create behaviors that are not
oh,
maybe not necessarily be the ones
a-
that they desire.
and those bugs are actually listed right now, even in the beta. Like they spell that out in the Xbox Insider release, whatever it was that they put out on their website. They talk about things you might experience doing this. But again, I mean, I don't understand how, you know, when I'm reading this, okay, content benefits seemingly prevent any bottlenecks for multiple users playing at the same time. So that's what that I think that's where people are getting the Halo thing from, right? Seamlessly preventing any bottlenecks for multiple users playing at the same time. You should, in theory, be able to play Halo Infinite campaign co-op via one Xbox Game Pass subscription, for example.
Yeah, that's co-op campaign, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
that
not that's not multiplayer at the same time.
right, right.
Yeah, well, that's kind of like signing in as a guest as you could on, before there was. Anyhow, look. So, point is, let's just wait until we get more information from Microsoft on this. Let's not
Yeah,
jump
or
to
or
conclusions.
or when we hear people test it, right, and try it, and actually post proof that they've done it, right? Because this is another thing that ran around during the network outages. We had lots of claims of people saying that they could do things and they couldn't do things, and I'm like, there's certain things that I listen to whether or not somebody has actually done something, right? There's a certain characterization of the facts that they lay out versus whether or not somebody claims that they can do something, but they haven't actually walked through the procedure and actually done it, right? Difference when people post screenshots, right, of things that they've actually done and completed, right, on a console versus, right, somebody posting a verbalization in a tweet. So just it's just going to take some time.
Yeah, and just yeah, no, no. I just I just scratch my head every time that when I see these things, especially from like content creators, because it does create a. I think it's one thing to say, "Hey, I think it's going to be 25," then it's or $10 more. Versus this is going to be $10. It's going to be amazing. Um, and I think it's unfortunate that people run with content creators because these creators feed the narrative that they want. I shouldn't be surprised if this happens though, because it happens in other areas, but like politics. But yeah, I don't know, kind of a pet peeve of mine, I guess. But anyhow, um, so Game Logic. I don't know if you saw this. This wasn't on the list of topics, but there is a developer who is currently a visual effects artist at Blizzard Entertainment. She was previously at Sony Santa Monica. And she tweeted out that she. So here was her tweet: "Math time. I spent at least 3,000 hours working on Ragnarok at minimum wage before taxes. That's $21,750. I was only one developer, and I don't work for minimum wage. $70 for a kick-ass PlayStation title is fair as fuck." Um, she's replying to somebody who said $70 for a video game. Fuck you. This was somebody who tweeted this. Um, and that kind of some of the commentary by people um, on her tweet were kind of interesting. Um, and I think I share this in the BRAP DM. I think I did, right? I don't
Yeah,
remember.
yep,
Yeah. So she goes back and she says, hold on a sec here. I got to pull the tweet back up. She goes back and she says, "I see that my point is flying over lots of heads. So allow me to rephrase. The $70 games, that $70 game costs millions to make. If you don't want to pay $70, then don't buy it." Which we talked a lot about on the show. But I just hold on a second. There's one comment here, the one comment that really kind of I gotta pull it up here. Give me a sec here, man. Where is this comment? And I can't find it now. Hold on. Somebody commented, "Stop placing the responsibility of a company paying its employees on the consumer. This is not a good tactic." Um, how are companies that make products supposed to pay their employees then? Right? Like, isn't that like? I mean, all
Yeah,
like every company that I've ever worked for is in the business of making money, and the money they make goes to pay our salaries. I don't understand. I guess I just don't understand some of the commentary I'm seeing here from her tweet.
yeah. This entire thread is really down a very deep toilet bowl. So even going back to the original tweet, right? The person who posted the $70 for a video game, fuck you, right? The full extent of his tweet is actually he was actually poking fun at gamer Twitter, and our sometimes enduring hypocrisy.
Yeah.
That gamer Twitter would yell and shout. Now I'm embellishing, right, and fleshing out his tweet, right. So gamer Twitter is yelling that $70 for a video game, f you, right? That's too expensive. And then we say when we see a $70 video game go on sale, we also say f you. I'm not paying that much for the game, right? So the game wasn't worth it to you at $70. When the game goes on sale, it's still not worth it to you, right? This kind of goes again down the point of, right, it's probably a game you were never going to play anyway. So then the developer jumps in, as you mentioned, right, and kind of points out what she said. Now, my thing is, when she pointed out what she said, very similar to a thread that I posted where I tried to build this very kind of low fidelity cost model, right, to try and highlight to people how a budget, right, for a video game would be built up, right, so that you could kind of try and understand what the total production cost of a video game was. I gave a lot of I used a lot of freedom in building that model and made it very very conservative, right? So it kind of came in what to me is on kind of the lower end of AAA development by all means. And again, what I said was you don't have to use my model. You can go in and tweak those. You can use the model, right? But you can go in and tweak the variables however you want, right? Whatever your beliefs are about the cost of game development or how much developers get paid or yada yada yada. The piece of information that she gave here. So she says she worked 3,000 hours on Ragnarok. She's a visual effects artist, as you mentioned, right? 3,000 hours is not what we call, right, in the technology industry an FTE or a full-time equivalent. So an FTE would be 1,880 hours. So she worked what sounds and looks like kind of to me like about a year and a half on the game, which means she probably came in on the tail end of the game development, or maybe she was on the front end, or maybe she was there in the middle, but she wasn't there for the entire production cycle of the game.
Hey, Lobster, by the way, I'm sorry. Keep going.
Yeah.
I'll be right back. I gotta step away for just a second.
Okay. And then, so the cost that she indicates, that what she cost the company would have been a very small piece, right, of the game's total development. And I think all that she was trying to do, she wasn't trying to shame the person who had said, right, $70 games, F you, because that person wasn't making fun really of the $70 pricing structure. He was making fun of the people who made fun of the $70 pricing structure. But the thing that I think we took exception to was the person who then took her tweet and quote tweeted it and said, "Stop placing the responsibility of a company paying its employees on the consumer," which to me is just a very weird extrapolation of what she said. I don't think she said anything in her tweet about passing on responsibility for paying an employee to consumers. Although, from a simple circulation of money thing, that is kind of sort of what actually happens, right? A company builds a product, they then sell the product. If the developer wants to have a job the next year, then that product needs to sell enough to have, to recover all the money that was spent to pay the development team, right? And it goes into kind of what I kind of characterize as think of it as like escrow, right? For the portfolio of all the game sales that are made in the year, and then that funds, right, what's made the following year. So, again, the use of this term, stop placing the responsibility of a company paying its employees on the consumer, just seems to be a very overly heavy-handed, gaslighting type of comment that's made to try and shame a person who is a video game creator. And one of the things I mentioned was, the people making these pricing decisions, they're not the developers. They're not a visual effects artist who worked for 1.5 years on the project for a major AAA game, right,
By the way,
coming out of
I
Sony
was
Santa
accused for
Monica.
socially shaming. By the way, on this particular.
Oh yeah, I mean I jumped on that too. Like I think this is one of the cases of a YouTuber who has a large following and his fan base who needs to jump in front of him to defend him. Um, but yeah, he's just like socially shaming people who critique your pricing structures. I don't know how you asking a question is socially shaming anyone. I also don't, again, as I was mentioning while you were away, like the developer who made her comment, right, which was just to give some insight into the incremental costs of game development. She wasn't trying to socially shame the other person either. So this is just an example of somebody trying to pounce on something and do a look at me, the fire's over here thing to call a bunch of Twitter vultures in to kind of rag on this person, based on a pretty wild extrapolation of what they were trying to say. And the thing that I mentioned is, developers, as we've seen a lot of the kind of vitriol that gets pointed at developers, right? The developers who are on Twitter aren't there, right, because their companies tell them to be, right? They're not there, quite frankly, even representing their companies, right? And in fact, right, as a fellow professional, right, in an adjacent market, I often tell these developers, I'm like, you guys shouldn't be on Twitter, right?
And by the way, it's funny. I have a friend that works at Bethesda, and he basically told me that pretty much the staff there that they don't go on Twitter because they feel like it's a toxic place, that gamers are not appreciative of the work they do and talk out their asses. And
right.
so
Like
that's coming from industry, by the way. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, so so they're not on here, but I mean, my bit larger point is that, right, there are corporate executives who make these decisions, right? This visual effects artist at Sony Santa Monica is not the one making a decision for the games being $70. If you have something nasty that you want to say about $70, point that at freaking Jim Ryan, right? And if you're really as altruistic as you claim, and you're really for the person and for the consumer, and you're really looking to put effort into it, then don't take the easy out, right, of taking a pot shot at somebody on Twitter. Get up off your butt and write an actual letter, right, or do something, right, or post a video about it, right. Say something, do something more with more significance and more weight than taking a pot shot cheap swipe at somebody, right, making a comment on Twitter. It was really, in my opinion, in poor taste. And again, it goes back to my feelings about there are people who are on Twitter and on YouTube who are in the business of benefiting themselves financially through video games. They are not there because they love video games. They are not there for the art. They are not there for their care of the employees, right? They are there to profit off of their popularity, and they go about everything and all of their communications as a popularity contest. This, in my opinion, is not a man who loves video games. This is a man who is trying to benefit himself, and taking again a wild, triple Lindy leap off of a diving board, right? In terms of something that somebody said and running it 50 miles out to sea, right, to create the picture that it's something that it's not.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that I've kind of found unfortunate with influencers and people on Twitter. It's not for the love of video games. It's more so to kind of Alex Jones's situation, like, and it just it's unfortunate. I mean, it's progressively gotten worse since I've been here. I've been on Twitter since 2013, gaming Twitter, if you will, and it's gotten worse, man. It really has, and yeah, it's what it is, I guess. I don't know, but
Yeah, and all that's not to say, again, not to say that, it's not to say you should be willing to pay $70 for video games. You got a super chat, by the way.
yeah, no, give me a sec here because I'm getting spammed right now.
Yeah. So it's not to say that you should agree with paying $70 for video games, right? Everybody, and I don't know, quite honestly, I don't know what people make their decisions on. I don't know whether people make their consumer decisions on whether or not they feel the cost, right? And this is the thing that I've been pointing out, is cost and price are two different things, right? Cost is cost of goods sold. Cost is how much how much money it takes me to build the product. Price is a matter of more so supply and demand. right? Where I take cost into consideration, but it's not the sole driving thing. And no company is required to sell its products at cost. And so people, I just
Well,
recommend that everybody
that's the
kind of,
thing. Why
yeah, go
why
ahead.
is it in gaming do we feel like they have to do that? No other, like, again, this I've been saying this for like months now. No other consumer product do we have this conversation. When Nike releases the 1985 Michael Jordans for $170, no one bats an eye. It's the same shoe. It hasn't improved. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, man. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why, no why, but it's just dumb. I'm sorry. I just think it's dumb. Like, we don't do this with other. We don't do the mental gymnastics that we do with this $7 price point or whatever the case is, or the fact that we think these companies should be selling games at cost. I mean, like, do we have this conversation for other goods? I mean, I'm curious. Do we? Do we yell at BMW for selling $100,000 you know uh, 7 Series vehicles when it probably costs them? I mean, I go back to Nike. Nike criminally, it probably costs $20 to make shoes. They sell them at $150, $170 a pop.
Oh,
Do
yeah.
we have this conversation about Nike?
Yeah. I mean, and I don't,
I don't get it, man. And again, I don't begrudge anyone who doesn't want to pay $70 for a game. That's fine. Like, don't buy it. Absolutely don't buy it. I don't have an issue with people saying, hey, you know what? That's a little bit more than I care to pay for a video game. I'm going to hold off. That's fine.
yeah. And I'm like you. Alvin in the chat says, I'll drop $125 on New Balances in a heartbeat. I am the same way, Alvin. I used to be a diehard Nike buyer, but I will buy, now I buy Saucony's. I'm not even sure if you pronounce that name brand right, but like for running shoes. And I will pay more for those than I will ever for Jordans. But you want to hit that super chat?
Oh yeah, let me get that super chat real quick. Hold on, let me let me get the super chat here. I gotta find it again. Where's that super? Oh, here we go. All right, here we go. Super chat. Carlos Crespin with the $5 super chat goes, why is it that we only see corporate tribalism in video games and no other commercial product? I mean, there's corporate tribalism in like other things. Chevy versus Ford is one that I'm aware of. I don't know.
We used to have this. All right, it's not quite corporate per se. I guess you call it corporate.
Intel,
A little bit. There used to be. I mean, I was going to say Apple versus Microsoft. I guess.
Or Apple, Android.
Yeah. Yeah, Apple, Android. Yeah.
But I don't think it's as bad as it is in gaming for some reason. I just feel like gaming's just on another level. So, yeah. Anyhow, all right. So, yeah, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I think about when games went up to $60. I didn't see this kind of level of mental gymnastics with that versus $70 games. I don't know, man.
Okay. I think the takeaway from this thing today was, look, my perspective is, the devs who choose to be on Twitter will often try and give people insight into the industry, right? And there's a lot of gamers who say, well, the industry is too closed. They're not sufficiently open and transparent. And I'm like, these are people who work in the industry trying to convey information to you. It's not really encouraging or incentivizing to them to continue to participate in that dialogue if you're just going to weaponize whatever you hear from them, right, and flip it back on them.
That's part of the problem. Like, like they don't want to engage because it does get weaponized, it gets taken out of context. And in fact, because maybe what they say doesn't fit a certain narrative, people get upset and cry like petulant children, and so they don't want to have conversation with you.
And I said it to the developer. I don't know if she saw my tweet. She may have muted everybody at that point. I don't know. But I said, look, understand that, the unfortunate reality, in my opinion, is that 90% of gamers, although they will claim to not know things or not be clear about things, they don't actually want to hear the answers. Um, all that trying to give them insight into the logic and rationale behind how the sausage is made, just gets met with
No,
invectives and
they
and,
they
and
they
anger. So
they want their narratives to be reinforced. They want to be like, "See, I was right. I was right." That's what they want,
right, right.
which is unfortunate. Which is yeah. Anyhow, um, which leads me to another topic: gaming media.
Oh,
Now,
hey, Brett.
yeah,
Before you
yeah,
go on here, I just want to ask one question, and maybe the chat could spit some answers
yeah.
on this. Um, while you introduce the new topic, so there are a lot of people in the chat who are not proponents of the $70 video game. One question I want to just ask, right? Because one of my things that I don't know that I believe is that people are comfortable with the things that they know. They're not they're not comfortable with the things that they don't know. That sometimes leads to them being uncomfortable with the thing simply because it's not what they grew up with, right? Um, and one of my questions is, the
Okay,
people who the people
that's
who
an
have a hard
example.
time with the $70 for a new game. Does anybody have any? And I'm not trying to poke you in the eye. I'm genuinely curious. Um, why is $70 for a game bad, but $60 for a game okay? How do you know that $60 isn't overpriced? Um, a lot of you just came into gaming when games were $60, and so for you that's a comfort, right? I'm trying to ask, what is the rationale behind, right, the difference in those prices in your minds? I mean, why aren't games $50, right? And why aren't you angry that games are $60? That's another thing that I just kind of don't understand. So
Yeah,
people can drop that in the chat if they want.
that's actually a great point. I would actually really be interested to hear from the chat because games were $50. So
They, they were
why is it?
$40 when I started buying
Yeah,
games,
they were
right?
$40 when we started. And no, you're right. I mean, they were $40 when we started gaming, and then they increased to 50. Why is $50? Um, why is 50 to 60 okay? And that's a $10 increase, but 60 to 70 is okay. Is it because this maybe in the back of your mind you're thinking, you know what, it's getting closer to 100, and that freaks me out? I mean, like that's a great question, Logic. Like uh, Pooh Golden says I was cool at 50.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you.
we also
Yeah,
said $60 is overpriced, and please, right, I would try to participate in the dialogue. Please try to participate equally. I mean, what does that mean? Like $60 overpriced? Why? Based on what? Um, right, based on that, was it the price when you started gaming or whatever? And Nine Lives says the market has spoken on $70. Horizon Forbidden West and GT7 have underperformed. Nine Lives, again, what's your justification for that? Or what sales numbers of Horizon Forbidden West and
I
GT7 are you basing that on? Yeah.
you can't pay attention to Nine Lives. He just talks out of his rear. He
Okay,
doesn't.
gotcha.
Yeah, Nine Lives. If you have some data that speaks to or that shows why Horizon Forbidden West and GT7 underperform, please share that in live chat. I'd be interested to see that. But outside of that, you're just console warring because that's kind of what you do. Um, but yeah, no, that's actually a great question. It'd be interesting to see kind of yeah, I agree with Forte. NFL 2K 5, which is one of the best football games ever, was $20.
Right, right.
Yeah,
I mean,
I mean,
I like Ryan
yeah,
Landis' response. I don't usually buy games at full price unless I'm playing them right away. That's a statement that Ryan. Forgive me if I'm characterizing you this way. This is just based on my interpretation. What you're saying is Ryan is a deal hunter, right? And he's not going to pay full price for anything. I'm assuming, Ryan, that this is also the logic that you apply to everything, right? In that unless it's something that you really want right then, generally you buy everything after it is on some type of discount, because you don't need to pay full price for it, up front.
yeah. You know what, Non Lives. I gotta be honest with you, man. Like, oh my god, dude. You're funny. He's saying, I mean, Horizon Forbidden West is being bundled with PS5. So when I asked him for data, that's what he comes out with.
That's 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 not quantification of why the game is
No,
underperformed.
Nine Lives, you're not quantifying anything, dude. You're not. Stop console warring, man. I've actually Nine Lives. I'm wondering if he actually does play video games. I'm curious now. Um. Anyhow, that's a great question though. You're right because a 50 to 60 is a $10 increase. 60 to 70 is also a $10 increase. So is it that I'm thinking logic that it's more so of we're getting closer to 100.
Well, I like what Pooh is saying here, right? I've been I've been paying for a long time and caved at 60, but I didn't like it. $70 feels like it's just way overboard. That I understand, and
That's fair.
that is a sociological right effect and dynamic that we see in markets from, forgive me, Pooh, older consumers, right? Older consumers will typically hit thresholds where they are unwilling to pay price increases to continue to stay in a market, right? And so this is why you will see probably as because we're now experiencing right the first and original gamers right starting to pass into more silver-haired years right for the first time. You will see a demographic of the market of senior citizen gamers who are not going to be right, who are going to fall out of the brand new game market, right? And that's understandable. Again, I joked around about like the gas prices, right? Love some of my older relatives to death, but I have the relatives who will go, across town to buy the cheaper gas, right? Just because, not because they remember a time when gas was, I don't know, 50 cents a gallon, right? And so they have a threshold at which they're willing to pay. Some other gamers, right, is as new gamers enter the market, and this is a thing that I think sometimes doesn't get recognized or realized in the conversation, is there are going to be gamers who come into the market, and for them, games will be $70, and that's all they'll know, right? And they're going to become accustomed to the feeling of that sweater, right? And they're going to be fine in it, right? And they're probably going to be fine in that sweater, right, till it jumps another, right, $10 or $20 over time. So that's different than when you run the numbers and tabulate them and say, hey, I think the game industry is charging too much for games, right? And that, at least for me personally, that's the conversation I haven't been willing to have. Fully okay with people, right, in the socio-cultural impacts of price sensitivity over time, and I get that. But the thing that I haven't really had a particular like for is people who will try and do all types of mental gymnastics and say, oh well, developers only make 60 grand, and so it really doesn't cost that much to make a game, and all of these kind of wild conjectures that are based on no actual factual data.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's just yeah. I'm gonna Nine Lives. You should change your name to Nine Lives Conjecture. All right. Hold on a second. I'm trying to look some of the information up here. Let's see. Trying to look up numbers for Horizon Forbidden West. He's saying that it's not selling well because Sony hasn't talked about it selling well. That's his reply. Anyhow, okay. And actually, Slobo, I mean not Slobo. Forte's not wrong. Forte's not wrong. Horizon Forbidden West did launch against a juggernaut, which is probably game of the year, and what's it called? God, why am I forgetting the name of the game?
But even at this, like my question would go back to what is underperformed, right? There's lots of different interpretations, right, or lots of different definitions of what underperformed is. There's the break-even point, at which point the project makes its money back for the expenditure. There is whatever the strategic targets of Sony were, right, which are arbitrary targets, right? Those are just strategic targets that the company sets, which are often fairly lofty. I think Jeff Grubb was the one who said that they typically target for like 15% profit, right, overall. So there's that. Then I mean, so again,
Yeah. And now he's saying that
what does that
Comer
mean?
already said The Last of Us 2 underperformed. Context compared to The Last of Us 1, yeah, it didn't sell as well, but it sold 10 million copies. I mean, the break even point is probably 4 or 5. Is that
Yeah.
financially speaking, is that underperforming?
Nah, nah. I mean,
No, it's
I don't
not.
think so. And it's definitely not underperforming as far as a comparative title. I mean, I hate to say it because I personally prefer Xbox over PlayStation, but it's definitely not underperforming in comparison to a comparative title on the other platform.
Yeah.
Again, 90% of the gaming industry titles that are released each year would kill to have sold 10 million copies.
Yeah, and that's the again, only 5% of all games are actually successful. So put that out there. All right, so I do want to move on to the gaming media, and you and I've talked about gaming media, and how it's kind of changed from our days reading EGM and you know print media to YouTube now, and yeah, that's all I got to say is yeah. Um, I don't, look, it, Mooch and I have talked about gaming media for some time. We used to go back and forth and disagree heavily on the fact that there was decline in gaming. He felt like, what the media is really not, that it's all about clickbait and sensationalism and all this stuff. And I was like, no, not so much. But I think it is now. um, and times have changed, and I get it. Like we're in the in a world of a 24/7 news cycle where you are competing against pundits, YouTubers now. People are getting information elsewhere. They're not tuning into 5 o'clock news on ABC or whatever the case is. Like we used to growing up. Remember that Game Logic where it was like your local channels, 5 o'clock news, and that was it. Now everyone has a voice. You have YouTubers, you have pundits, you have um, people, um, you have this 24/7 news cycle where it's this, you have to keep a high level of engagement. You got to get people to drive traffic to your platform, to your website, to your YouTube channel. Things have changed. I get that. But I'm starting to feel like some of it's forced at times. And there's one, and I know people are going to be like, oh, you're picking on this individual. It's not that I'm picking on him per se. It just, I am baffled by his tenure in covering the gaming industry, and the fact that his channel seems very forced. And he's not the only one. There's others I've seen. And not, and by the way, not all. Um, I don't think not everyone in game journalism is doing this. I really enjoy Ryan McCaffrey's content, Jeff Grubb, um, to extent Paul Tassi, Jason Schreier. Personally speak, I don't care for him because I think he's kind of a dick. Um, but he does have some really, insightful articles at times. Although I now am kind of taking those things with a grain of salt after Michael, I forget his last name now, he used to work at Sony, Mumbauer, I think his last name is, kind of debunked one of Jason's articles. But Game Logic, like, what are your thoughts on games media? Because you and I come from that print media generation where, it was, you get a magazine that would talk about games, trends that they were seeing, reviews, things like that. I'm seeing a lot of more sensationalism and clickbait now in gaming journalism. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been talking about this for a while, right? I mean, I grew up on, when I first got, well, I mean, it was my second time getting into PC gaming, but it was where I really went hardcore in PC gaming and was reading a ton of literature. I was a big reader of PC Gamer and Maximum PC and, Gary Whitta and Greg Viderman and Norman Chan, Gordon Ma-Ung. And journalism at that point had not been overridden entirely by the internet. We didn't have the preeminence of kind of like the Engadgets and the Gizmodos. And so, I think there was still a tighter coupling to notions of journalistic integrity and journalistic responsibility. I mentioned a few weeks ago how PC Gamer ran an article about the drives, the aftermarket drives you can put into the Steam Deck, and kind of ran that article headline as if it was a recommendation, where that form factor within the Steam Deck is not what the Steam Deck is actually designed for and actually compromises its ability to dissipate heat. But you didn't get that. We just talked earlier in this show about how people tend to only read the headlines of articles. You didn't really get to all those warnings and things until like pretty deep into the article. Whereas, the way I remember things back again in those PC Gamer Maximum PC days is, those types of warnings would have been very prominent at the top of an article, and I would say that that type of article wouldn't even have been ran at the time. So I personally have a higher expectation of games journalism. I originally myself kind of got into blogging and podcasting and stuff because I felt that I was already seeing kind of a slip in the way gaming news was being reported, technology news was being reported, just in the way that it wasn't akin to kind of what everyone's experience was. But I've seen it, gradually tip further and further downhill over time, I think.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, man. Like it's definitely it definitely has. It's like, it's kind of point like I've kind of I have a list of like journalists that I will follow and read, their content, but some of the stuff that I've seen is just, and actually I am going to pick on Destin a little bit. Cuz he I don't I he's got his own channel. It just seems to me, in my opinion, um that he's really trying hard to kind of capture that audience that loves like the pundits, the YouTubers that go out there and shout and have clickbait titles. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if you watch his content, Game Logic, but he seems to be kind of going after that. And you know what's funny? Like the and again, I'm only referring to gaming Twitter. They hated the Xbox community hated him last generation. And I remember Xbox influencers saying he's biased, he's terrible. Now they love him, which is kind of interesting. But anyhow, I want to play something real quick here. Give me just a second here. Hold on just a sec here. Nope, that's not working. Hold on just a sec here. All right. I'm going to play something here in just a second. All right. Here we go. So this is Destin Legary. Put on video. A PlayStation sounds weak as fuck against Xbox Activision merger. Love that clickbait, by the way. By the way, we have a Bitcoin problem here in the live chat, which Forte, I think if you're in the live chat, if you could help with. Actually, you know what? Hold on a sec here. All right, Jess, I just added you as a moderator. So if you could help, I'd definitely appreciate it. All right. So this is the kind of stuff that we see, though, Logic. And mind you, he is a contributor at IGN, or has been with IGN for years. The title, PlayStation sounds weak as fuck against Xbox Activision merger. Um, I don't think there's any doubt, at least in my opinion. He's clearly trying to, gain some traffic. But there's some interesting things he says here. Hold on just a sec here. I'm sorry. Hold on just a sec. All right, sorry about that. I had to just step away for a sec. All right, so I'm going to play his kind of opening statements here in the video.
It's almost disrespectful to the developers who work on their team. Let me talk about where I'm coming from right now.
All right. So, Lodge, did you hear what he said about it's almost disrespectful about um, what Sony said about Call of Duty to developers they have in house first party?
Yeah, I mean, we covered this on the show, right? I mean, I mean, so great Scott. So a games media journalist should know the same things that we said about the Sony filings right earlier this week, and should have, if they were responsible, if they were showing journalistic responsibility, should have presented them in the same way, right? That that is a regulatory commission facing documentation, right? Document. It's not something that they did an all hands for and got everybody's input on from the development. I mean, come on, like again, it was a questionnaire, right? It's not like these were orals or interviews, right? It was basically a request for information, which means it was a bunch of people sat down, tactically went over what they wanted the overall theming and message to be, and that theming and message was not to be something that was crafted in a way that it would benefit their competitor, right? Because that would make no business sense, right? And at the end of the day, these are businesses, right? We go back to the person who was ranting and raving about, right, trying to make it the consumer's responsibility to pay people's employees' paychecks. That's stupid, right? But these are all businesses who have to pay their employees, who have to answer to regulatory commissions, who they may not be, again, I go back to the Apple Samsung court cases, right? And Apple Samsung, there actually was a lot of hate there. But in a lot of cases, there's not actual genuine hate between these companies and corporations. But, if, look, if three cars were involved in an accident, right, and we all get separated, and the cop asks me for my input, right, if I'm not absolutely certain, if I'm not right on the doorstep of committing perjury, I'm not just going to willfully say, it was my fault. It wasn't their fault, right? I'm not going to overcommit, right, on my responses. If there's a shadow of a doubt, right, as to what may have happened, I'm going to leave that empty, right? As I talked about during the week, right, if it's on a risk is on a sliding scale, and companies quantify that. This questionnaire didn't ask them to quantify that, right? If the risk to Sony was a 1, right, of Microsoft acquiring Activision, if Sony really felt that it was zero threat, that they had already compensated for it, that they had a strategy that was going to let them ride through, that acquiring Bungie and putting all these 10 games, multiplayer games, and live service games into production pipeline was going to be the answer, and that this was no problem. That's not what they're going to say to the regulatory commission, right? They're going to say to the regulatory commission that this is a move that has a risk to the industry and presents a risk to us as a competitor, right? Because at the end of the day, the thing that most benefits Sony is for Microsoft to not make the Activision acquisition, right? So, but this diatribe that this guy has on his channel is meant to rile people up and call out the pitches and torchworks.
Yeah.
I always do that every week on this rant.
No,
torches and pitchforks.
That's my point with him. Like, it's interesting, and he was on. And actually, Alvin brings up a good point. Big shout out to Hogue Law, by the way. We've had Hogue Law on BRAP before, and Destin was on with Hogue, and it was more of a conversation without all the hyperbole that Destin
all the color commentary. He's like campaigning for what's the guy's name? Herb Kirktree or whatever, the football announcer for who's going to be with Al Michaels now. I mean, he's
yeah. But here's the thing. Like, I'm going to go back to this.
To the developers who work on. It's almost disrespectful to the developers who work on their team.
Like how do you arrive to? It's almost disrespectful to developers that work on your team that they can't make that, because again, this is about Sony saying that, hey, you know what? No one can do a COD. No one has ever done a COD. I mean, like, Sony's not off base here with saying that, like, Call of Duty is a juggernaut. Developers have tried. I mean, Battlefield, for example, has tried to topple the behemoth that is Call of Duty unsuccessfully. And he'll later on mention, like, oh, it's disrespectful to Bungie, that's behind Destiny. Destiny, while it's an immensely popular game, in reality, is not on the same, like, just not on the same level in terms of popularity and what it does from a revenue standpoint as Call of Duty. Like Logic, we've been gaming for a long time. I don't think I've ever seen a juggernaut like Call of Duty in the 40 years I've been gaming. This game just does things, and we talked about this on BRAP. Like, yeah, they lost 30 million gamers, but they're at 92 million. I mean, there's development teams that would kill for that. There's games that would kill for that kind of, for that many players on a game. That's why when I heard that, I'm like, how are you arriving to this conclusion? I don't understand it. Do you think it's disrespectful, Game Logic, that Sony said this to their do you think it's disrespectful to their developers that they said this? That no one.
Yeah, I mean that obviously wasn't the intent, right? And it's obviously clear that Jim Ryan has the utmost respect for the King Studios, right, in his camp, right, the Naughty Dogs and the Sucker Punches and all that kind of stuff, right, and Guerrilla Games.
Yeah, not like saying I should bring Jaffe on. He said the same thing. I don't agree with what Jaffe said either. I heard what he said. He said they were whining and crying like bitches, and maybe he didn't say bitches, but he said they were whining and crying, and they should try to create something else or something, have all the talent or something. I'm paraphrasing what Jaffe said. I don't agree with what Jaffe said either.
Right, and I mean, and Nine Lives, I just maybe before I just kind of stop being able to see your comments in chat, right? The problem is I think with your line of I'll barely refer to it as reasoning, is everything that you're bringing up is always based on what some personality has said, and that's not verification or validation in my book, right? If you have something to offer that is a matter of fact, you can bring that up, but just pointing to, right, this person on Fox News said it, doesn't make it right in my book. Critical thought and actual analysis is not based on what personality said a thing. It's based on, right, corroborating evidence and a chain of rationalization and logic. And that's, I think, the discussion that we're having here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm going to go to, let's see here, further along the video. Let's see what he says here.
It really upsets me because I understand why they're doing it, but I just find it incredibly disrespectful to do that. They also talk about how GamePass has captured approximately 60 to 70% of the global market for subscription services over the past 5 years. The market share in Brazil is reportedly even higher.
All right, so now he's talking about like Game Pass and what Sony said about Game Pass, but again, before that, he talked about I find this to be entirely disrespectful, but he doesn't even flesh that out. But also, again, he's not even taking into account the fact that this is a questionnaire presented to Sony by the regulatory agency in Brazil, which we talked about this on BRAP. Like, it's not that Sony said, "Hey, you know what, guys? Here's our commentary." This is something that I think Ubisoft responded to. Who else was it? Google, if I'm not mistaken,
and Amazon.
Yeah. So there were other companies. So I don't understand this play on disrespect. And the problem, I think, with this take again is that people will watch this and they're going to run with it and be like, "Oh my God, Sony hates their first party developers." I've seen that on Twitter. They're being disrespectful. It's like, Destin, dude, you're a journalist, man. Like, come on. Like, why are you chumming the waters? I don't get that. And I feel like this is not all gaming journalists do this, but he is trying to be this, like, is it because, do you think that he's doing this because I guess is there competition from the YouTube space with the Yang Ye's of the world and these pundits that have 1 million followers, and they throw out these hot takes and people just pom it and run with it. Is this why this is happening?
I mean, the only reason I suspect this is happening is because it's there's money to be made, and if you have access and you're I don't know, if you're an insider, right, then why would you leave that money on the table, I guess, if that's a way that you want to go about earning it. and so he doesn't restrict himself to just following, IG, to just doing his IGN shtick and following, whatever rules and things that they have in place. This is his side gig, and it doesn't have, the same type of rules and constraints around it. But again, I mean, this is, I say similar things about other people in other roles, and my belief is, if you're a journalist, right, then that carries a certain weight with it, right? You can choose not to.
There's some responsibility, I feel like.
Right.
Yeah. And unfortunately, like, I feel like we're seeing what's happened in the political spectrum of things with Fox News, and actually Destin blocked me because he said something, and I'm like, yeah, you're becoming like the Fox News of gaming, and he blocked me, which is fine. I mean, whatever. It's I think this is an unfortunate path for gaming media to go down, because what's happening now is you're seeing people, one, run with the Sony's being disrespectful to their first party, and now you're seeing in the live chat, oh well, Destin's getting that bag. Destin's probably not getting that bag from Microsoft. I mean, Destin is playing sides to make money.
Right. I mean, doesn't his channel have like multiple subscription tiers or something to it?
Yes, which, by the way, I don't take when Destin talks about $70 games. I don't take him seriously, because he has a $90 tier, by the way. Like, really? Like, I can't take you seriously if you have a $90 tier on your YouTube channel.
Yeah. Does that get you cookies?
I mean, he's got a cookie business, so I mean, hopefully, shit, Destin, if you're charging $90 for fucking cookie, I mean, for for a tier, you better include those cookies. I mean, seriously. But see, like, here's the thing, Sir Nick, Destin is a pure Xbox fanboy, and it's funny because last generation, people were like, Destin hates Xbox.
Right. I mean, so Texas says he's a journalist. Yes, he's also a gamer that can form his own opinion. I don't disagree with you. My feeling, again, what I said was that, in my opinion, he's a journalist, and there's a certain cloak he doesn't get to take off, right? Right. I fulfill a certain function, right, in my work life, and that's a certain cloak I don't get to take off, right? Even though I'm on social media, right, not speaking under my legal name, right? However, it would be feasible, right, for someone, including a customer of mine, right, to link those personas, right? And so I carry myself in a way that I would not hopefully have to answer questions, right, when I go to work, right, with customers. And so, whether you agree with it or not, again, up to you. My personal feeling is, when you commit yourself, right, to a work path or a lifestyle that sometimes brings with it certain responsibilities, there are other types of journalists that don't necessarily ascribe to that ethos, right? Jerry Springer, Geraldo Rivera. There are people in these lanes who run sensationalist type of networks and channels and content, and those people ascribe to a different type of ethos, and that's fine for them. Just understand that puts those people in a certain pile for me. And if other people want to listen to them, as other people do, we have lots of people who pay attention to Alex Jones and will still believe him, right, regardless of what's going on in the court case this week. And that's those people's choice, right? You can choose what to believe. For me, it's just a matter of, what bucket do I put Destin Legarie in, and I put him right in one with a bunch of other people who are not credible.
Yeah, I don't think Destin's very credible. Actually, I put him in the Alex Jones bucket. And by the way, it was great to see Alex Jones get yeah. Did you? I don't know if you heard him say, "Well, I believe that's the truth." Anyhow, let's see here. I think I have another. Let's see here. I think, what else does he say here? I'm gonna play this part here.
Headlines I've seen, I think that was the reaction that most people had.
Okay, hold on. Let me go back a little bit here, because again,
and I'll add to that, right? Because
reaction of most people. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, because some people are talking about it in the chat, right? And to me, it's not necessarily that he's formulating his own opinion. It's that his opinion in some cases a wrong extrapolation, hyperbolic extension, right, of things that have been stated. Again, there are things that are oriented around sensationalism and riling people up, and they're not right. They're not, in my opinion, they're not the types of things that I would recommend people listen to, right? Because again, what he's doing is he's taking a lot of comments that Sony has made in this questionnaire and extrapolating them as if they are exemplary of Sony's character, right, and their corporate culture and what they like believe, right?
And by the way, he states that. He says, I bet that people at Sony aren't happy about this. Destin, how do you know that? I mean, have you talked to people?
Right.
And the problem, the outcome of that statement is people run with, yeah, well, Sony can't be happy.
Right. And it's just like I pointed out earlier this week. There was a document that went to the New Zealand Regulatory Commission from Microsoft where they said there's nothing unique about Call of Duty. It's not really a big deal. Anybody could go.
I'm sorry.
What's that?
To Destin's credit, he actually did do a video on that when he's like, yeah, okay, Xbox, you guys are full of shit saying that. He did say that, but
yeah.
Go ahead, man.
So my point is that, right, these are pieces of paper that are being fed to regulatory commissions to influence them to make their decisions in certain ways, right? Extrapolating them as if this is what the companies really think, right? It's, again, if you've seen A Few Good Men, right, this is not about what the companies really think or what's really true. It's about what they can prove.
Few Good Men?
Right? Yeah.
I said, you can't handle the truth?
Yeah. Remember the line from Lieutenant Caffey, right? It doesn't matter what I believe. It only matters what I can prove, right? Exactly. And that's how these RFIs are crafted, right? They're crafted to try and influence the regulatory commission to believe a certain thing and to sway their decision in a certain direction. It's not necessarily what Jim Ryan really believes in terms of quantification, right? I say it's not necessarily that they're lying, but, if you take their statements as meaning, oh my God, the sky is falling, right? I don't think that's where it is on the scale. It might be all the way on the left-hand side of the scale at a 1 or a 2, right, on a scale of 10, but that's not what the questioner asked them. This is similar to a question in court, right, where the lawyer asks you, is such and such a thing possible, right? You may, in your expert opinion, know that it may be that it's not probable, right? But the lawyer is simply trying to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt. He didn't ask you what's probable. He asked you, is it possible? And that's the way these guys have answered these questionnaires.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go to this clip here with Destin again.
Right now, with the comments that have been released publicly now. And based on the headlines I've seen, I think that was the reaction that most people had. I don't think they're actually scared. I think they're like hamming it up a little bit for the Brazilian whatever that is asking them, well, how do you feel about it? Well, we really don't want it to happen. And everybody else can smell bullshit just like I can. We know that Sony is going to continue making phenomenal games, whether or not this deal goes through.
All right, Logic, what do you think on this commentary there, what he just said?
Yeah, I probably would have said that up front, right? Rather than putting a clickbaity headline in, right, and pulling a lot of people through a bunch of stuff, right? I mean, he could have said that at the beginning of the video, and the video could have been like 2 minutes, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole point, is that the questionnaire is a bunch of fluff, right, in terms of their response. If it's a bunch of fluff, why would you extrapolate that as being disrespectful to the developers?
Well, I was going to say, he kind of contradicts what he said earlier there.
Right.
He says we all know they're full of bullshit or whatever, right? But then he totally contradicted what he said earlier.
Right.
It's like, which one, Destin? Which one is it? Like, are they being disrespectful? Are they bullshitting? Like, if they're bullshitting, they're not being disrespectful. Then, I mean,
right.
I just, this kind of shit. Just hold on, I'm gonna go to one more. Actually, I'm going to get Borbor Country.
Yeah, I love Borbor's super chats.
Borbor Country, the $2 super chat says, companies would reprimand you for off-job behavior.
That's very true, Borbor. That's very true.
That is true, Borbor. Yeah, actually, that was a great super chat, Borbor.
Hey, Borbor, that's why we're not on this podcast, right? Saying that somebody's being disrespectful to developers.
No, I don't get that at all. Now, is there political grandstanding here by Sony? Absolutely. But Destin knows this. I just, come on, man. All right, let me go do one more. Hold on a second. think I may have. Hold on.
But people remember shit like this. When you say stuff like that, it's just not a good look. And I have to imagine like the Sony corporate people are not happy about.
Okay. All right. So I have an issue with this. People don't forget this bullshit. No, actually, Destin, people do. Most people don't even know what the fuck's happening. Most people that are gaming, this like he's but and this is the hyperbole. He's addressing a small space or referring to a small group of people, the Twitter bubble, right? Um, people are either going to forget this because or they're not going to forget it because how poorly you presented the argument, but most people probably aren't going to know what Sony said. They're going to enjoy their Sony PlayStation 5s. Are they going to enjoy their Xboxes or their PCs? Hopefully they're on PC because that's the definitive platform to play video games. But I mean, like, people are going to forget that comment right there. Like, come on, man. Really?
Yeah, and he's saying that the people back at the Sony corporate offices are the people who will be unhappy. I would think that it's probably more likely that people back at the Sony corporate offices actually understand how this was put together and why it was put together, and that it was meant to say a business thing oriented to help them achieve their goals, not that it was meant as a slag against Sony employees, right? So,
yeah, no, I would agree with you. I mean, that the response to the questionnaire wasn't done like, oh, we just got a questionnaire for the Brazilian regulatory agency. I'm just going to fill this out. Whoever got that isn't just going to fill it out. It's going to be discussed behind closed doors.
Excruciatingly, and likely, I mean, I assure you that the response to that questionnaire drove some staffers absolutely nuts over weekends, right? Trying to pull it together through multiple drafts, getting it chopped, passing it up a chain of command, being rewritten 59 times over, right?
Yes, because that's how companies respond to questionnaires like this, especially from regulatory agencies. Probably went through legal. I mean, these things aren't taken lightly. So for Destin to sit there and say, oh, people at corporate, Destin, how do you know? You don't know, number one. So you shouldn't even present that argument. So this is where I fear gaming journalism, not all gaming journalists, because there's some good ones out there. But I feel like this is where things are probably heading. And that's unfortunate. We have enough YouTube pundits. I don't think we need gaming journalists kind of jumping into the fray of being pundits and doing what Destin's doing here.
Well, it was nice when you could separate those two entities, right? But I feel like there's just a lot of convergence going now where me personally, I can't put, there used to be a time where I would put more credence, right, in an actual journalistic outlet, right, over right a YouTuber, but now I'm finding in many cases neither, right, is reliable.
The lines are kind of blurring a little bit, and it's not all journalists, by the way. I want to make that clear because I don't want people to think that it's every gaming journalist, but they are there are some out there that are doing this, and I think Destin this week being the biggest offender of that with this YouTube video and making these hyperbolic statements, and it's just like, why? Like, I would imagine you as a journalist, maybe you have some contacts in the industry. Like maybe the article is or the video is reaching out to Sony, getting some insight. I don't know, man. I just very cringe. Let me play some more here
about these comments out today because it looks weak, and weakness is not something that Sony or PlayStation wants to be exhibiting in this market, especially when they have done so many smart things this last
year. Weakness. Like I don't I don't get that. I mean, I guess what I'm struggling to understand is how is responding to a regulatory agency as you would expect in this case, Sony to respond. If you contrast to what Microsoft said, you wouldn't expect Microsoft to respond any differently by saying, "Oh, COD, you know, COD's not really that big of a deal," which they did with the New Zealand agency. Like, how is that a show of weakness? I,
Right. And so I guess if you're like Destin, and I guess like a Cycle Gamer is saying in the chat, it does make Sony look weak. Again, I mean, then the alternative is, I guess what you're saying is that you would expect that they would say, no biggie, go ahead and let the merger and acquisition go through, won't change the landscape at all. All competitive market share we expect to stay the same, and it's not really a big deal. I mean, even if that were true, if you know anything about how you run a business and how you respond, right, to legal questionnaires and respond to regulatory commission questionnaires, that's probably not the thing that you're going to say. Because why would you say that?
yeah, you wouldn't say that, especially if this is about your competitor. Like, you just wouldn't say that. That's the part that's baffling. So Cycle Gamers say they aren't taking COD away from Sony like Sony's taking games away from Xbox. What? Like, what games is Sony taking away from Xbox that are on scale of COD, and that are on scale of the Activision, Blizzard acquisition? I mean, like, we're talking about an $80 billion acquisition. Mind you, Microsoft's biggest acquisition ever. I don't know, man. Let me play some more here.
Year so tremendously well. It's just one of those stories that I'm just like, no, get off it, get out of here. You just had a terrible quarter and still posted huge profits, right? Whatever. That's my 2 cents on it. I think they look really weak. I think all of these stories are not a good look for Sony. And I am sort of.
So, what's interesting? He's saying all these stories are not a good look, but just looking at the PlayStation brand, Sony, despite whatever Sony said, as a brand, they're going to be fine.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, it's like,
I just don't understand the base. Is not a good look. So is he saying that he feels like the way Sony answered the questionnaire is going to cause people who are on the PlayStation platform to jump ship because they feel there's a loss of confidence, right, in Sony Corporation about the PlayStation brand? Again, I think that's a pretty wild leap.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, people aren't going to leave PlayStation because they look weak. No, they're going to judge. Like we've been gaming for 40 plus years. What drives people to platforms isn't what they said to a regulatory agency. It's content. Like, am I wrong? Like, right? I mean,
right.
Why do we buy? I mean, why do we buy platforms to play video games? It's all content driven. The majority of the people that own a PlayStation had no idea what Sony said to a regulatory agency. And as long as they're getting their Spider-Mans, or, they can play with their friends online, or they can, do all these, enjoy video games, they don't care. I'm going to play a little bit more here.
Sort of curious what the reaction is going to be over the next few days as more and more of these stories come out and more people see it. Like, are people going to make a deal with Sony, going to start second guessing that, being like, maybe we should talk to Xbox first because Sony seems real scared about that deal?
Okay, that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, that's
so
yeah,
Justin, what you're saying is the market leader, the developers aren't going to want to make deals with a market leader because of a commentary or because of a questionnaire they reply to.
Yeah, there's your Maury Povich moment right there.
That was a Maury Povich moment. like what? Like, dude, put the tinfoil hat on at this point.
Yeah, I don't think anybody picked up the phone and was calling into the Sony corporate offices saying, hey, we're not going to take that meeting next week. We're going to kind of pump the brakes on this. We just heard how you guys answered the Brazilian Trade Commission about Activision merger, and we think we're going to hold off and give some more consideration to who we're going to make a deal with.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, like that, like what he said, I'm like, dude, like you've been a and maybe maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but you've been a gaming journalist for how long? Come on, you can't believe that. Yeah, play a little. I'm going to play a little bit more here.
As we know, Sony hates it when their documents get into the public, because when we did the Epic versus Apple versus everybody in the world case, those documents came out and they tried to hush them up right away. The documents I talked about earlier with.
I mean, Sony wasn't trying to hush up a questionnaire to a regulatory agency, though.
No. I mean, it's I'm pretty sure it's known that those things would be matters of public record. So, no, I completely agree with them about the Sony versus Epic thing. Like, and look, this is right in the difference in this commentary. Right, is I've been on record saying Sony has a messaging problem. I've been on record saying Sony does a lot of making a big deal out of a thing that wouldn't be a big deal if Sony would just shut their mouth up about it. Right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Right. All the cross-play stuff. Right. Yeah. All of the upgrade pass stuff. Yeah. Like just shut up. Like other companies don't have problems with these things because they just. I mean, whether you think it's a good or a bad, right? When Microsoft decides to make their game $70, I think they're just going to put a price tag on it and put it up in the store and not say anything about it, right? And that's just going to be the way that it is. Maybe Microsoft will do that, maybe they won't. Other companies have, though, is my point. And so, absolutely right. Some of those things, and what was their other big thing that they let get loose or that got loose? Well, I guess it was basically the crossplay thing that it was really a matter over right there, feeling that their channels of monetization would be impinged by allowing crossplay, which really I go back to that really wasn't a matter of crossplay. That was really a matter of cross progression. When you talk about the sharing of purchase content across platforms. And so Sony definitely has made transgressions in the past, right, with things of that nature. But this isn't it. Right, and this is somebody who, like you said, should have the experience and the savvy to understand the differences in those, but is clearly conflating them with a clickbaity headline, right, in an effort to kind of gain views.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm going to play a little bit more of this video here.
The crossplay tax that they would implement on people. It's just, it's messed up. Anyway, that's the game, right? They're playing the game, and we're all reacting to it. But that's my 2 cents. I'd love to hear your 2 cents.
That's messed up. They're playing the game. I don't know, man. It doesn't seem there's a lot of thought process behind that. I feel like towards the end of this video, this is where I feel like he's trying very hard. And I don't know, man. Yeah. Again, I think that this is I really don't think this was a well thought out video. and that's being nice about it. And I feel like there's a lot of hyperbole here. He's making a lot of assumptions. And there's no, I mean, again, I go back to the people at corporate Sony. He doesn't know that. He's making assumptions. And this unfortunately creates creates a lot of the, false narratives that I've been seeing as a result to this video about Sony. So yeah. By the way, El Chingado, I like the name. It's not Brat, it's BRAP. Why do you care about other people's opinion? That's his channel. Because because we're having a conversation. I mean, like,
yeah, and in the commentary here is it's not another YouTuber. right? It's not that we're throwing shade. It's somebody who's kind of doing the same thing that we do here. It's somebody who is you would think is a trusted, verifiable. I mean, somebody who works for a publication who you look to as a source for information. And I get it, right? Even in journalism, you have these notions of op-ed pieces, right? And editorials, right? Things where journalists can kind of go off and state their own like political opinion and yada yada yada. Um, and even while in some of those venues there may be journalists that with whom I disagree with their philosophy, that's different than when you are running a thing that right is very akin to like the equivalent of the National Enquirer, right? When you're running what is essentially a tabloid piece based on a lot of conjecture and a lot of sensationalism, and just kind of cutting 180 degrees against the grain of, at least in my mind, for me, what my expectations are of a journalist. Again, you don't have to agree. You don't have to meet me on the same plane, right? I'm just expressing my opinion. And if you trust Destin, right, if you think he's a credible source, then you're certainly welcome to go off and, right, and follow him and consume that content. We're just, at least for me, I'm just stating, my commentary and my view on the thing.
Yeah, and I like someone said, play his a video about Microsoft, and I said earlier he did call Microsoft's bullshit in response to the questionnaire by the New Zealand regulatory agency, but he wasn't as hyperbolic in that video as he was with the Sony video. So it just no, but you're right. Like Game Logic, it's about his standing in the community, standing as a journalist. That the fact that he's putting out this kind of content, which again it kind of blurs the lines, like you said. Like we used to be able to kind of be like, hey, you know what, there's a difference between the YouTubers and the journalists. That line's being blurred now. And the fact that he is you know being sensationalist about what's going on at Sony and making these claims. I mean, it's funny. Like I used to read some of the stuff he would say on Twitter about the console war. It's ridiculous, and yet, but he's feeding it. Like he's chumming the waters to his own benefit. By the way, financial benefit. He's got a $9 tier, which blows my mind. By the way, I'm wondering if I should do a $90 tier. Maybe I'll send cookies. Or some of that Papa Pilar rum, Is that what it's called, by the way? Is it Papa? I forget.
Papa's Pilar.
Papa's Pilar. Yeah. Maybe Brap will do a tier, and if you subscribe to $90 a month, I'll send you some Papa's Pilar rum, with a free game.
Right.
Anyhow, yeah, that's all I have to say about Destin Legary. But where are my cookies, Destin? I don't know, man. It just that video really was like wow for me. Just yeah. So anyhow, yeah, BRAP brownies. I don't think I'm going to make BRAP brownies. By the way, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that. Maybe I should though. Actually, that's not a bad idea. $9 BRAP brownies and some Papa Pilar rum. I don't know. Maybe. Anyhow. All right, Logic. Look, man. It's almost 9:30. I was trying to keep this short to 2 hours. And I feel like we kind of ranted about Destin quite a bit. But look, I want to thank everyone in the live chat for hanging out with us. Really appreciate each and every one of you for spending your Friday night with us. Please hit that like button. If you're new to the show, subscribe. Hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. Game Logic, thank you again, man, for doing the BRAP rant. Always appreciate your insight. I think you bring a very unique insight to podcasting in general. I mean, I think you the one thing I appreciate about you, Game Logic, is that you kind of, I guess, you critically think about a lot of things that people don't. And I feel like that's missing in the YouTube space. So thank you again, man, for your time. And I don't know if you want to be found, but if you do, let everyone know they can find you. If not, that's okay.
Yeah, man. No, I'm good. I mean, you guys can find me on Twitter under the same handle here, and that will lead you on to other paths if there's other stuff that you want to take a look at, other podcasts I'm on and stuff. I think the interesting thing is, somebody I chose not to respond to it this week, but I saw somebody comment. It wasn't at me, but my paranoia. You never know if they're talking about you. About imagine being a consumer and talking about corporate revenues and quarterly earnings, right? Or what's the next thing? Are you gonna like be talking about Kellogg's and cornflakes? Um, well, uh, look, my thing is, and yes, I'm a consumer, right? I'm not an agricultural cereal expert. My domain expertise is in software development, project management, program management. Um, program operations, running projects, running a business, pricing, software estimates, that type of thing. And so, right, why do we comment on this stuff, or I comment on this stuff? It's because I have a professional career track that gives me some insight into some things that are adjacencies, that are very similar to things in the gaming industry, and I think it's worthwhile to put that dialogue out there because, as you mentioned, Brap, sometimes it's not the thing that a lot of other people think about. Not to say that it's better or superior, but that it's just different, right? And it gives people different views and different perspectives, and presents to them concepts that maybe they didn't consider. So,
hey, Game Logic, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
yeah, go ahead.
The one thing I appreciate about you, and I think about other, like, we've had developers on the show before, and people that have worked in the industry, they provide a perspective that a lot of people don't have. I think that perspective needs to be heard because and again, I'm not trying to say that people are. I think that people, because they don't understand the way the sausage is made, it's easy for them, I think, to um, uh, I think it's easy for them to come to a conclusion that may not be correct per se. Like, I there's a lot of information out there, and I think, and again, I go back to the pandemic, and I remember having conversations about vaccines and things like that, and like, there's so much information out there, and sometimes it's hard to weed through that information, but sometimes it's like, let's like listen to the people that have had experience in this, that might be subject matter experts, as opposed to people who aren't, that are presenting themselves as such. So, and that's, again, for the things you mentioned in terms of your experience, that's what I appreciate about you in terms of what you bring to the conversation. You have a perspective that, one, I don't have, because I've never developed software, and I have some P&L experience, but not to the extent that you have, or I've never run a business per se. But I think it's important to get individuals who are, I almost said Shmi, but such a matter expert. Um, to get individuals who understand, that could talk about these things in a way, um, that where they're coming from a position of knowledge. So, because I feel like we don't get that a lot in social media, which is unfortunate. So,
Thanks, I appreciate it, man. I think you missed. I think there's one other super chat that we didn't
oh,
hit.
is there? Is it Borbor?
No, it's a Psycho Gamer. And I apologize. I was looking at this, and then we took off on another tangent, and I forgot to.
All right, let me. Cycle Gamer. Where's Cycle Gamer? Oh, here we go. All right. Cycle Gamer with a $2 super chat says journalists have been playing sides for a long time. I don't know about that. I don't know if I agree with that, Cycle Gamer, because I go back to the days of GamePro, EGM, Nintendo Power. Um, yeah, for, I don't think that's the case. I don't remember journalists taking the kind of. I don't remember journalists making comments the way Destin just did in that video, by the way, in print media. I don't remember that.
Yeah, and I mean,
Maybe they did. I don't recall that. I feel like, gaming journalism back then was really about what games are in the pipeline, what games are being made, or maybe kind of a feature article on a specific developer. but reviews, but I don't recall them being hyperbolic or anything like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
and I'm sure there's been individual cases, right? But I think, at least from my perspective, what I'm saying is, um, I have not observed where I can like put my thumb on a person who is kind of clearly in one camp or the other. Definitely so. I mean, they all have their preferences, right? But like, even if you take, and I'll just take it, Greg Miller, right, who obviously is enamored with PlayStation, right? Um, at least from my experience, right? He says some joking things about Xbox, but I have not personally witnessed it. I haven't watched every single piece of Greg Miller content. For instance, I haven't personally witnessed like Greg Miller dragging Xbox through the mud in an unwarranted fashion, right? When Microsoft has made a mistake, right? That's been covered. But like you said, Greg then readily admits, right, that he prefers the PlayStation platform, right, and that's what he primarily reports on. But then he doesn't do coverage that he presents in kind of a false, unbiased manner, right, for the other platform in a negative light. So I don't know, but I mean, Psycho Gamer, you're an adult, so you can definitely make your own choices about what journalists you are fine with. So again, we're just presenting our perspective and our opinion.
yeah. So no, thank you for that super chat, Psycho Gamer. Appreciate it. All right, everyone. Thank you again. Everyone, enjoy the weekend. Play some video games. Have fun, because that's what gaming's all about. And let's see. Texas says GamePro and EGM had partial journalists. They spoke differently and not with profanity. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. All right. I thought I missed a super chat. Never mind. All right. Everyone, please enjoy the weekend. Have fun. Hit that like button. And if you're new to the show, subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. And again, have a great weekend, everyone. Have fun playing video games. Play some Fortnite, because that's what I'm playing right now. And we'll catch you on Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we're out. Peace.